look at Jeffrey Dahmer, who the majority of people that listen to the death metal in this podcast know who Jeffrey Dahmer is. Okay?
Yeah.
So we're not going to put Jeffrey Dahmer to death, but he can't do it to anybody else. Okay, fine. And there's people in prison with him that we didn't put to death because they can't hurt anybody else, but yet they killed Jeffrey Dahmer. You know, so then you say, well, yeah, but it's Jeffrey Dahmer. Nobody really cares, right? You know, he got put to death. He was killed by inmates. Well, then, okay, then why isn't the death penalty for Jeffrey Dahmer not okay?
Greetings, Legion, and welcome to episode 232 of Into the Necrosphere. On this week's installment of the podcast, I am joined by the great Jamie Bailey of Brodequin. They have just put out, in my view, the greatest comeback in the history of death metal with their brand new record, Harbinger of Woe. Jamie joined me for a full track-by-track breakdown of this absolutely blistering record. We also spoke at length about the events that led to the band going on hiatus, what it was like for Broquin returning to the scene after nearly 2 decades away, and much, much more. There are a couple of Broquin interviews doing the rounds at the moment, but I guarantee you, there's not a single one that is this comprehensive and, let's be honest, this entertaining. Before we get to that, though, a couple of weeks ago on the news rant, I mentioned a band out of Norway called Fleshmeadow. And I was absolutely befuddled as to how this band isn't much, much bigger than they are. The record industry's shunning of them does not, however, preclude them from attaining the greatest honor of all, which is a showcase on the Into the Necrosphere Independent Band Spotlight. So coming off their latest EP, Domus Cadavra, this is a track called The Long March to Total Annihilation. Fleshmeadow with a song entitled The Long March to Total Annihilation. It comes off their latest EP, Domus Cadavra, a band who have received the cold shoulder from the record industry, but find themselves clutched to the warm bosom of Into the Necrosphere this week on my Independent Band Spotlight. If you're an independent band and you've just spent your last penny on your best ever recording and you want me to hear what it sounds like, then drop me a line on intothenecrosphere@gmail.com. Hit me up on any of the socials. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, or X, and if I like what I hear, I will feature it on the show. We have had many premieres. Many bands that we featured have gone on to be signed. There are record labels that listen to the podcast, so who knows? The Into the Necrosphere Independent Band Spotlight, in addition to being the greatest possible accolade and really the greatest achievement you can attain in the underground, may also be the springboard to your future fame and fortune. Friends, if you are new to the podcast, and judging by the absolutely tremendous response to last week's episode that I did with the folks from Gehenna, many of you potentially are new this week. So if you are new, welcome to the Legion. If you're a tenured member of the Legion, you know what I'm about to say. This podcast drops brand new episodes every Tuesday, free of charge. All I ask in return is that you share it with a friend, foist it on an enemy, make sure the subscribe button has been slapped around like it owes you money on your platform of choice. Leave me a 5-star review. I think we're up to about 138, 140 now on Spotify. I would love to see that go past 200. So help a brother out. And then finally, if you truly want to show your colors, if you want to fly the Into the Necrosphere flag, head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store. Pick yourself out a tank top for the summer, a t-shirt, a hoodie, whatever catches your fancy. When I am done with this week's episode, don't go sobbing and crying, turning to alcohol and drugs to dull the pain until the next installment of the show, because my brothers in the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse, perhaps the greatest group of content creators ever assembled, have got you covered from Monday to Sunday. We start on a Monday with Horrorwolf 666, hosted by Brandon Legion. Every Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays posers on Into the Necrosphere. Next week is going to be a distinctly poser-free episode because my guest is Spellgoth of the band Horner and Night Shall Drape Us. And yes, I know that I promised that for this week's episode, I decided on a last-minute change to the schedule. But trust me when I say, I mentioned it last week and I mentioned it again, that conversation with Spellgoth was one of the most surprising I've had on the show, basically since I've started it. So you're going to not want to miss that installment of the podcast. You won't want to miss any installment of the podcast. But before you get to that, on a Wednesday, you've got Mike Hill, Sensei Mike Hill, bringing you another episode of Everything Went Black. He returns because he's an industrious fellow. On a Thursday, with my favorite podcast of the week, Necromaniacs, the podcast I will always listen to from end to end, no matter how busy I get. He's joined by his co-hosts, Sheriff Mike Scandado and Professor Jeff Kashid. Sheriff Mike Scandado is actually my co-host on this week's installment of the Weekly News Rant. That's happening after my conversation with Jamie. We're listening to brand new music by Iblis, Tribulation, Defiled. We even did ourselves the injury of checking out a new song by Squaler Grind. So stay tuned for a lot of fiery debate, some varying opinions, but always a great time catching up with Mike. I mean, this is kind of like a podcast within a podcast. Stick around for that one. On a Thursday and on a Sunday, the sinister minister Carl Hikara takes you on a curated journey through the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric with his podcast Soul Knox. And then coming at you every second Wednesday, the great Cheyenne, leader of the band Trivax, host of the brilliant Iblis Manifestations podcast. Friends, I hope that you enjoy the next, I think, about 2.5 to 3 hours with me. We start off with me welcoming to the podcast for the first time. I've said this many times before, but I can almost guarantee you this is the case for this individual. definitely not the last time. Jamie Bailey of Brodequin. Normally, there we go.
There we go.
I was just about to say, what the fuck?
Right.
I am glad that we finally managed to get this lined up, though. And my apologies, because it was my fuck up on the first diary screw up. But welcome to the show, Jamie Bailey.
Thank you very much.
You must be feeling pretty good right about now, because I think Harbinger of Woe, I've certainly see cropping up on a lot of these mid-year lists where everybody's, saying like, this is one of my favorite albums of 2024. And then a lot of my friends were at MDF and saw you guys play and were raving about the show.
That's great. Yeah, no, it's been an interesting kind of ride so far. It was, if we look at Maryland, maybe we start there being its most recent. The response was overwhelming. I'd even mentioned to the crowd, thank you so much. The response is absolutely overwhelming, way more than we anticipated. It was quite the experience. And with being, without having a new album out for so long, you never know how people will react to the new material, right? I mean, we hear it all the time. We have bands that we love that take a hiatus for whatever reason, and when they come back, they're just not the same. Something's missing from that. And for us, fortunately, we haven't experienced that. The response has been fantastic. I just was texted the other day that the second pressing Through Season of Mist sold out again. So, here we go. And then that's just, it's fantastic, man. I really couldn't be happier, to be honest.
It's surprising to me as well, not in the sense that you guys were ever a band that should, were overlooked. I think certainly in certain circles, but exactly as you just said. Now it's 20 years since your last full length album, right? And you bring out this record, and I kind of felt like the excitement and the hype around this record was quite organic. It was never really. It wasn't kind of pushed by a lot of outlets the way that you see a lot of other records get pushed. It just felt like it sort of built a momentum all on its own.
I agree. It kind of took a life of its own. The word of mouth advertising, like almost in any, if you want to say business, right, is the best ever. You can pay as much as you want to for promotion, but really when a friend comes up to you or a colleague and says, hey, I just checked out this album and I think you're going to love it. That's the best you can get right there. And that's what we've kind of been experiencing with this has been, as you had said, it's very, very true, a very organic kind of movement and support for the record.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I know you will almost certainly have spoken about this before, but just so for posterity for this episode, we've got the whole story. What was it? What happened after Methods of Execution? Like, why did things go quiet for the band? Because it wasn't until 2021 that you put out something again.
That's probably correct. 2020, 2021, where we did the little EP. That sounds right to me. So we had a period of, what would you call it? So there's always going to be bumps in the road when you're getting new members, right? Like the lag time is unbelievable. When a new member comes in, you've got to learn all the old material that you're going to play live. That takes a tremendous amount of time. And then you can finally get to that point where you're going to start writing new music, which takes another, tremendous amount of time. But before we even went through the issues of having to get new people to kind of to learn the old stuff and to start writing the new stuff, is my brother and I went through a period of where our parents and aunts and uncles and everybody just passed away, like in rapid succession. And you find yourself in a position that no one's really necessarily prepared for some of these things. So I don't mean that, everyone's, going to be caught off guard or they're going to be ready to go. But when you find yourself all of a sudden being in charge of, family estates and things of that nature, and lawyers are getting involved and people are getting sued and so on and so forth, it really creates a scenario where there's no time for anything else other to focus on that. And so that happened fairly, I say rapidly, but it was strung out. And by rapidly, I mean, you would have a family member, like, for example, I'll start with our parents, for example, they passed away 2 years apart. So when you're finally kind of like back to normal, so to speak, from one, then the other one goes. And in the meantime, you had aunts and uncles and everything else going at the same time. So when it all comes down to it, Mike and I were the only ones left. So it was just a wasteland, and there was nothing. There was no way that at least speaking for myself, and I know Mike to some extent was exactly the same. There was nowhere in like my mental space that I could set aside and start working on music and lyrics and artwork, et cetera, et cetera. It just was all encompassing. So that really preoccupied the bulk of that time.
Had you guys been a pretty tight-knit family before that happened?
Yeah, mom and dad always were super supportive of what we did, which is kind of rare. You talk to people all the time, and you hear the stories sometimes about parents not being supportive of these endeavors. Because look, it is a financial burden. There's no doubt about it.
You mean you're not making millions?
Yeah, I know, right? I know it's shocking, but
I know.
But no, they were all super supportive. I mean, they turned our living room was our practice space. So that's extremely rare, and I never took it for granted. We weren't one of the bands that had to try to come up with $400 or $500 a month to rent a space just to practice. We could just practice right there at home. So they're always super supportive. Our father actually financed the first CD, the first pressing of Instruments of Torture. He took care of that, and so it was always a really cool thing. Even though they didn't necessarily weren't fans of the music per se, they were supportive of what we were into, which was super cool.
And how old were the two of you when you started getting interested in this music?
I'd say, let's see, probably around 16 or so, 15, something like that, in that ballpark. It's one of those things, you go down the kind of the list, you look at the genealogy of heavy metal and so on and so forth. So our parents listened to all kinds of stuff, but my dad turned us on to Black Sabbath. He was like, it was something that was played around the house, Black Sabbath, Alice Cooper, Led Zeppelin, all this stuff. And so that leads you down that path of, if you're into that kind of thing, well, what's heavier than Black Sabbath? Who plays heavier than that? Who plays faster than that? And then all of a sudden you enter these realms of Metallica, Megadeth, Iron Maiden, and okay, well, who plays faster and heavier than that? And one thing leads to another, and that's kind of got us where we're at. You're just trying to follow that path all the time of the fastest, heaviest stuff we could get. And that's how we ended up here, I guess.
Yeah, and I was curious about that because it's, I jokingly always say my parents treat not only the podcast, but music generally like it's a drug addiction. I'm their son who's been successful despite it all, but, let's just not talk about the addiction to crack that he's got. But
right.
I mean, I would imagine, your dad at least being into Sabbath and Alice Cooper and Led Zeppelin and stuff, at least he had, like, for his generation, he was into the edgy stuff of the day. So he could have some degree of appreciation for what his son was getting into. Oh,
for sure. That, and, there were times where he'd peek in just to see what we were doing. We were practicing, and he was always, I don't want to say blown away. That's not right. But he was always interested in how fast, our fingers might be going on the fretboard, for example. Like, oh my God, what are you guys doing? It was kind of funny in that respect. But yeah, and he tinkered around with guitar, so he could appreciate what it takes, to kind of create this type of music.
Do you ever ask him to rehearse with you guys?
No, he never did. No, he was never into that. But again, being he just kind of tinkered, it was one of those things where, he would go years without picking up a guitar. One of those type of things. So no, never did. That could have been an interesting time, though.
I would imagine so. Out of interest, are you the eldest of you and your brother?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. That's correct. Yeah.
I was about to say, so a lot of the responsibility, I guess, kind of just by default, when things happen like parents passing on, it just automatically falls on you.
Yeah, it does. And then, but that being said, when one of our uncles passed away, Mike said, "Hey, look, you've dealt with so much of this stuff. Let me just go ahead and take care of this one." So that was cool, and I was able to give him some of the things that I kind of learned along the way to help make it a smooth process. Because also, when we had some of these happening, they were several states away, which made things even more difficult. Because sometimes you need to be there for certain things, other times you can handle over the phone. But yeah, it's a time-consuming process, without a doubt.
And there's in the US, there's like different state laws that have an impact on how some of these things play out as well, which I guess throws additional complexity into it.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And of course, you don't live in these states. You're not familiar with the rules and regulations. So you got to get, kind of caught up to speed on that. And then again, lawyers get involved and it gets wild.
Yeah. No, again, I'm probably asking more than I typically would on a podcast because, my parents are now in their mid 70s, and
Mhm.
in spite of the fact that they, deny their son's, involvement in this horrific music,
Right.
and we were very close.
Sure.
But my dad isn't in particularly great health, and
Mhm.
I do look at it and go like, I wonder how many more years I've got to
Right.
go back to South Africa, which is where I grew up.
Oh,
Go back
wow.
to South
Okay.
Africa, visit them,
Yeah.
spend some time with them. Like I can't, it's a sad thing, but I'm sort of in a way you kind of start to mentally prepare yourself that this this
Right.
is going to this
That's right.
eventuality is coming.
And I think it's also interesting too, because, a lot of the people in our scene, we don't necessarily talk about shit like this. We
No.
talk about the music all the time, and this, that, and the other. But, there is truly this absolute human element here that we don't really talk about. And, we may see somebody in passing on Facebook or whatever social media you do, where they make a post about a family member passing on or whatnot. And, people throw their condolences and this, that, and the other. But I don't know. I just think it's kind of one of those things. We all share the experience, and I don't think there's any taboo necessarily talking about it and saying, hey, this was a pretty damn devastating experience that, I went through. So if you're going through it, I get where you're coming from. And if you need to talk about it, here's my phone number. That's just something that, at least from my experience in the scene, I don't see a lot of that,
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I have no idea. That's a great question. I don't know if, just throwing generalities out there, I don't know if maybe a big bulk of our scene is a fairly independent mindset that just wants to deal with things on their own. I don't know. I have no idea, but I'll use myself as an example. When it went for us, I did completely withdraw from everything. It felt to me like a safer space, so to speak, to just, circle the wagons and bring everything in nice and tight and not have to deal with any of these externalities, So I don't know. It's interesting, but I would definitely say, I've probably not said this, but I would definitely say if somebody is going through something, they absolutely can shoot me an email or whatever. And I would absolutely respond and reach out and offer whatever I could, because it's a brutal experience and we're all going to go through it at some point, whether it be family or friends.
100%. And I think if you go to the average show and you look at the age of a lot of people that are there now, I mean, they're all starting to get to that point where it's due to happen.
Right.
As morbid and as morose as that might sound. But I think it's a very admirable thing to do, to reach out to people, at least make yourself available to people so they know they've got somebody to talk to. I had a guy that was that I went to school with who took his own life about probably 3 months ago. Yeah. And I made a point of calling a couple of people on Facebook Messenger that I hadn't spoken to for 25 years at least.
Yeah, I understand.
And most of them, when they answer the call, were so fucking blown away. Like, I haven't heard from you ages. I said, I just wanted to see how you're doing. It's, I didn't particularly like school. Many of the people I went to school with, I didn't like either. But, a couple of people I did like, I haven't spoken to them in years. And it's like, this is a really shit thing. I mean, even the guy that took his own life, I'd be sitting here lying if I said he was my best mate. But, the guy had a little girl. It really, as a father, that it really hit me when that happened. Like when I saw he posted this picture of him walking away with her, like, not into the sunset, but just down this road. Yeah. He posted that picture literally hours before he killed himself. Yeah. And when I saw that it really like knocked me, stunned me to silence. I didn't know what to say.
I can imagine. Yeah.
So so I made sure I reached out to a couple of folks, and it was kind of the same thing. Yeah. But again, maybe it's a sign of the scene growing up to a certain degree. I mean, I think there's always been kind of a very masculine edge to what we do, and the stoicism comes with that. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Right. The same thing, you also, we talk about brotherhood and we talk about like this community. Mm-hmm. You should be able to lean on your brothers and on the community when things when the chips are really down for you. Yeah, I totally agree. I couldn't agree more. That's well said. Was there ever a point where Broquin was effectively over? because I mean, again, 2 decades is a fair
considerable
while.
Yeah. We never officially declared it over. It was never like, okay, we're done. But I mean, absolutely, there would have been a period there when nothing was happening. So you could say it was, because we were writing nothing. It was a complete standstill. And then, we would get around each other and kind of, play some things here or there, share some riffs, like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And then nothing would happen for quite a period of time for whatever reason. But I wouldn't say it was ever officially dead or done, but it was certainly frozen for a period of time.
So what was the catalyst that got you writing again? Because I'll tell you something. Yeah. Harbinger of Woe sounds like the work of young men. It's not. Oh. It doesn't sound like old heads that have been doing this for a while. Right. It has this really. I mean, there's many things about the record that I love, but one of the things I love about it, it's got this kind of this almost youthful exuberance. I think if somebody didn't know the band and they heard that and nobody told them that, hey, the first demo came out in 1999,
right?
I think they'd be fucking blown away. I think they'd think, oh, it's a brand new band. It sounds absolutely awesome. Who are these 20-somethings and where did they come from?
Exactly right. Yeah, no, that's interesting. No, thanks. I don't know. We just went at it, and a lot of the mindset was, it felt like a pretty much natural step from the last album. Like we didn't approach this thinking, okay, we need to write differently or we need to try and make it sound a certain way. It was just very much what we were writing in the moment, and it just came out the way it did. I really, it's difficult to try and put in words, when you're writing these type of things, how they come together, but it was very natural. One thing led to another, and it just kind of fell in place, really.
Was there anything in particular that made you want to start writing again? Like, had you and your brother been practicing, during that period where the band was kind of, on ice, or was there because the EP came out in 2021. If you were if you're data minded, you look at that and you go, COVID happens, everyone's sat at home, maybe that's an opportunity to start doing some more stuff together. But was there one particular thing that made you go, okay, time for us to get this shit going again?
I think there was a lot of things that we still wanted to do that we hadn't done before. We were kind of goofing off here and there, writing a few things together. COVID hit, as you said, kind of shut a lot of things down. There was an opportunity there to kind of focus on writing because there really wasn't a whole lot else to do. You're kind of stuck at home, you're doing this. But I think it was really a drive to push out some of the things that we hadn't been able to release yet, kind of push the thought process as far as it lyrically and musically of what we can do, what we would like to do, and it just kind of happened. Like, let's just do it. What are we waiting for? And then there it was. Then you get the lineup kind of nailed down, and you're ready to go.
When you started coming back into the scene again, how did you find that things had changed from the scene that you'd kind of left behind? Because I feel like my observation certainly is that musically the scene has changed an awful lot. Sure. But I think the industry has gone through a pretty seismic shift as well. But I've always been curious as to, a musician, somebody that was actually in the scene. I mean, I know you were also, you own your own record label as well. You'd been very deep into it. Like how different was it when you came back to it properly?
There were a lot of differences. I think obviously there's the digital world is a double-edged sword. You can get your music out to the masses immediately with all the different options we have, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. The issue with that is one of many things that bands used to count on was selling physical merchandise. That's tough. Now CDs are not moving like they used to, which used to be a big bulk of sales and the profit, if you want to call it that, for bands that were able to roll it into other merchandise, whether it be, apparel or whatnot. That's tough. The digital, the money you get from that is really almost insignificant. When you really start to look at how it's all broken down, the shipping costs that have been happening in the United States have been unbelievable. I mean, it is pretty much prohibitive to ship anything overseas. It's insanely expensive. When you're talking about CDs costing anywhere from $14 to $16 to ship to Western Europe, That's crazy. T-shirts are $20 or so. That's insane. So I found that we had to try and figure out a way to get materials in Europe for the European fan base that they didn't have to pay those crazy prices. Also, there seems to be not with the older bands, the bands that were around back kind of when we were going on are still of the same mindset, but there is a certain element. There's always been competition, and that's cool. Nothing wrong with competition. It just makes you better. It really does kind of push you. But there's a different feeling of competition now, I think, with a lot of the newer bands. And I'm not pointing at anybody in specifically here, but it just seems like back in the day there was a lot more of helping each other out, and only with publicity and even with gear and things of that nature. Now it's quite the ordeal if you're playing a show and you're on the road and you ask somebody to use an amp. It's like, uh-oh, you're crossing some lines. Back in the day, it was no big deal at all. And in the Ohio Death Fest days, my bass rig was on stage for 2 full days. I didn't care. It's just bands need to use this stuff, So I don't know. There's definitely some shifts. Maybe also there's a lot of I always thought, like, you pick the band. If I don't like the band, I'm just simply not going to listen to the band. I'm not going to buy their stuff. I'm not going to go out of my way to jump on some kind of social media and talk all kinds of smack about them. But now that seems to be the absolute norm. Somebody posts, hey, what about the new Marduk album's fantastic? I'm saying it because you're wearing a shirt. You know what I mean? The new Marduk album's fantastic. And somebody will come in and go, oh, yeah, well, I prefer Emperor. It's like nobody asks, what you prefer. We're just simply, this guy's just simply making an observation of what he enjoys. But I don't know. There's a certain segment that are really quick to come in and just talk smack about whatever. I don't really understand that.
I'm absolutely with you there. I had a guy comment the other day. I'm very lucky that, generally speaking, even though the podcast has grown this year in particular exponentially bigger than what it was when a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot of trolls. I don't really have a lot of. I don't have a lot of detractors. It's quite a. We've created quite a cool sort of almost organic community around my and all the other podcasts that are kind of in this circle, the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, as we've dubbed ourselves.
That's great.
But I had a guy the other day post a thing. I posted a conversation that I had with somebody from Guerrilla on my YouTube channel. Posted about it on Instagram. This fucking idiot writes a comment there. We shouldn't be platforming these poser bands. I thought to myself, like, at what point do you write that and then expect a positive result? Do you think I'm going to read your comment and go, "Oh my God, you're right.
Right.
I'll delete the episode right now."
Right. Exactly. No,
it's so fucking stupid.
It is absolutely
this
stupid.
Weird kind of entitlement whereby people think that whatever inane comments or observations or opinions they impose on us,
right, we
immediately have to act.
Right.
Because of reasons no one can quite comprehend.
I was going to say reasons unknown that we're going to have to go ahead and, arrange everything around them and their attitudes on the situation. Yeah, no, I don't understand it.
Yeah. But I mean, again, I think it's, I think if, I saw Glenn Benton the other day talking about, the internet making people stupider. And I made the argument, I don't actually think the internet's made people stupider. It's not made them stupider because they have much more access to information now than they had ever before. So demonstrably it couldn't have made them stupider. But what it has done, unfortunately, in my opinion, is it's amplified, it's supercharged a lot of very negative and destructive and unnecessary behaviors from a lot of human beings. And a lot of it is tied to self-importance, inflated sense of self-importance,
right?
Narcissism. And I think, and that unfortunately, I think is why you see all the fucking craziness that you see online.
I think it's directly related. Excuse me, without a doubt. I really do. Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's more, you have access to more information in your pocket and your cell phone than the history of mankind. I mean, anything you want to know, you just type it in and you're ready to go. It's going to lead you down a rabbit hole of all kinds of stuff, good or bad. Like you said, it could definitely go bad. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, it's I don't know. Attention spans are dropping too. You know what I mean? Like it's if you don't catch people within 10 seconds, it's over. You got to have them right away. They're going to skip to the next video or whatnot. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see music and how it's changing and so on and so forth in the coming years, will writing styles change to capture that first 10, 15 seconds? And then maybe they go on to some more experimental stuff later on. I don't know. A friend of mine sent me, I can't remember the company. I'd have to look it up, but he sent me a AI song that he created, and all he had to do was come up with the lyrics and then pick basically what he wanted to sound like. And man, it was ridiculous. I couldn't believe how good it sounded. Like it's kind of scary. Like it was a good run, writing albums.
Well, did you hear those Depeche Mode songs that came out a couple of, so it's not Depeche Mode that put them out. It was an AI trained to sound like Depeche Mode that put out about 3 or 4 different songs. And the lyrics on the first one was pretty atrocious. Like you could tell straight away, these are not actual multiple lyrics.
Yeah.
But fuck me, the music was like, wow. I sat there listening, thinking to myself, like, I have to be very honest here and say that's probably better than the music that they wrote for their last album.
Right. I got it, man. It's crazy. It's a crazy thing. I guess, there'll be good and bad with that too. We just have to figure it out as we go.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder at what point would it get to a place where, like, I'm a very big hi-fi nut. And the other day I was sort of thinking to myself, at what point do you get to, rather than having streamers as your source, you have AI as your source, and you have an app connected to the AI that's connected to your speakers and stuff. And all you do is you just type in, I want to hear death metal that, where they sing about X, and just, within seconds, it's spitting out songs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're there. You know what I mean? It's absolutely there. They've already got, the AI DJs and things of that nature. So it'll go through and find and make playlists for you. It's crazy how fast that technology is advancing.
Yeah. I mean, as a guy that was in the actual industry itself, do you still have your record label, by the way?
It's pretty much not functioning anymore. It's just we have the things up still available digitally because everything's going digital. It's very rare. I won't say very rare, but we probably ship out CDs, a couple times a week, but it's just from different bands on the label. But it's not like it used to be. Not even close. It's a fraction of what it used to be. So it's difficult, with shipping being as high as it is. When you bring bands on board, you want to treat them as fairly as possible, and you reach a point to where, well, the release from, XYZ band is just really funding the release for the next band. And that's okay. But the problem with it is you find out that the amount of time that you're putting in it is there's nothing in return. And it makes it even worse because you can't even really provide the bands with anything worthwhile. So I found myself like, I don't want to do it if I can't give bands what they deserve. Yeah. And that's where we ended up. Yeah.
Well, you put out the previous Broquin record, Methods of Execution, that came out on your own, on your own label. Yep. So what's it been like being with Season of Mist for Harbinger of Woe?
It's been great. It's been so different. Everything back in the past we had to do ourselves. We had to track down all these people like yourself to try and talk to. Back in the day it would be, whatever zine or whatnot, of course. But they've been a tremendous help in getting the word out on the record. I couldn't really have expected better, to be honest with you. They're super excited about it. They're fans of it, which is exciting to me. That was one of the things that kind of led us to them, is when we had first begun talking to them, they knew about all the previous records. They were fans of them. They knew all about the image and everything, so on and so forth, and were very excited about what was coming. Very interested. What were you guys doing? Blah, blah, blah. And so they were on board from the beginning, which just gave us, extreme confidence. And I mean, we like tons of bands on their label. So it was kind of, it was perfect match as far as I'm concerned. They've been fantastic with getting us in touch with people like yourself and really pushing it out there. I think the words Michael from Season of Mist used when I saw him in Maryland was, I think your band has been underexposed over the previous years, because they weren't expecting, I don't think they were honestly expecting the response that they got. When that first press sold out so fast, they were like, what the hell's going on? Now for the second one to sell out, they're just kind of freaking out about it as much as we are, which is great. That's what you want from a label. You want to have that kind of same kind of goal, same kind of excitement.
And that's vinyl pressing, or is that CD?
Both. Yeah,
Both. Okay.
yeah, that both went. So they've gone through several different, one of the things now, of course, is the vinyl colors, right? All kinds of different special colors, limited press and stuff like that. 200 of these, 200 of those. So it's pretty cool. They've gone through several of those. I think I've gotten all of them except for the splatter one. That one just sold out immediately, which is cool. I'll end up buying one off eBay someday.
Yeah. Now, we talk about where we get our information from, and you developed what I think it's maybe fair to describe it as a obsessive interest in medieval torture that has formed the basis of all the Broquin lyrics ever since. What I wanted to do is talk through some of the songs on the Harbinger of Woe, because the stories behind this are super interesting, but I know you will know way more about it than I do. So let's start with Diabolical Edict. What is the story behind this track?
So we're basically talking, and of course I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of the individual's name.
Don't worry, this is a podcast where butchery of surnames, song names, city names is commonplace.
Okay, very good. So this is basically based about a priest from France named Urbain. I would pronounce it Urbain Grandier by the way it's spelled, but from what I've heard, it's more like Grandier. Okay,
now Grandier.
Yeah, somebody French will chime in and correct us. I have no doubt. But it's basically about him. It was a more or less kind of a political situation. He comes into a situation here where he's going to be the leader of the church, and he's kind of, long story short, has friction with the local politicians, and allegedly, he was a fairly attractive dude. So what they did is concocted a story that he basically was possessing the nuns, because they're there, locked away in their situation, but they could peek out windows and see him, so on and so forth. So to get rid of him, and then he did. The story goes, I can't remember that it was a local politician. He impregnated the daughter. This is very bad, obviously, So we have to get rid of this guy. So they put him to torture, had him sign a false confession, and actually in the first CD, in the Instruments of Torture CD, in the tray card is an illustration of the Brodequin, which is the name of the band, of course. And he's the one that suffered that probably most famously. And so that's what that illustration is of. So they gave him the torture with the Brodequin, and ultimately ended up burning him at the stake for his alleged involvement with demons and so forth. And they had a signed contract, of course, proving that he was guilty. And the demons, all their signatures were on the paper, because I'm sure that's what demons would do.
Naturally,
would be sign a piece of paper. So and the deal was they were supposed to, they're supposed to have some decency, and they were going to execute him first and then burn him, but it didn't work out that way. They
decided we'll do the burning first, and then once you've been burnt enough, we'll finish the job.
Right. It's incredible to me, some of the stories, and just how wild it seems. And a lot of this stuff comes from eyewitness accounts. The Inquisition have phenomenal record keeping, and because one of the difference would be if you look at the Inquisition versus a regular witch hunt, so to speak, is a regular witch hunt would round them up and get this stuff done in a couple days, a week. The Inquisition would do this over years. They took their time with it, very, very slow, very methodical. So there's thousands and thousands of pages available for research.
What got you interested in this particular sphere of history? Because I think history is a very interesting thing. I've over the years noticed it's kind of like almost these eras in history speak to people, and then they get completely enveloped in that one particular era. I know people that are completely and utterly obsessed with the First World War, people that are completely and utterly obsessed with the Second World War. And this obviously has become your forte. What was it about it that you found most interesting, that got you so captivated by it?
It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it was. As a kid, I was one of the oddballs in that, most kids in history class would rather just go to sleep or just not be there. And to me, I thought, well, this is really kind of interesting. You're telling me this happened here, or, local history is a big thing too, where you actually live, things that have happened, down the street, for example. So that kind of captured my interest of what was going on. We moved around a lot as kids. So that kind of kept the ball rolling. We ended up in interesting places. When we lived in Massachusetts, for example, we went to Salem a couple times, and I was young there, and it was the Salem Witch Museum there was a fantastic experience as a kid because it was overwhelming at what you were seeing. Things like that, living close to things that had things that were interesting, at least interesting to me, that happened, kind of started that kind of obsession to hear, I guess. Of course, I was also interested in the American Civil War, World War I, World War II, stuff like that. But for whatever reason, there was something about medieval Europe that really caught my eye. And when it did, I think it's probably fair to call it, on one sense, it's kind of an obsession. The amount of books I have here on the subject is insane. It's just, and anytime I see one, I buy it, and it just, I go to a lot of used bookstores or university sales or whatever I can do. But again, what was it about medieval Europe is I don't know what it was about medieval Europe that said, hey, this is really interesting. Maybe it was one of those situations when, you hear about maybe the death penalty in the United States. Maybe I was young and heard about something happening here, and I thought, oh, wow, that's pretty wild. And then you find out, oh, shit, this has been going on forever. This is not a new thing. This has been going on since, the first time you picked up a rock. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is. And then one of the things that got me was the engineering involved in some of these items. Like, this is just not a person that said, you know what, we're going to go throw a rope over a branch and just hang this person. No. There was some extreme thought and intelligence that went into some of these designs. And that was pretty mind-blowing to me as a 15-year-old, going, what? How in the world would you even make something like this? And then as I got older, it just it got, more and more interesting as you start to understand engineering principles and things like that. You just think, my God, like, I don't know. It took a tremendous amount of a tremendous amount of effort to create some of these things, and money, of course.
Yeah. I had my own moment with that years ago. My parents first came to visit me here in London, and I took them to the London Dungeon. And there's part of the attraction is this whole piece around medieval torture instruments.
Right.
And exactly the same as you, I was blown away. I couldn't believe that people would have the wherewithal to think up something that's so mechanically complex to perform such a simple task, which is basically inflict as much pain as humanly possible.
That's right. One of the big thing, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No.
One of the big things was the discovery / invention of a ratcheting system. Once you come across a ratcheting system, it used to be on the rack, you and I are on the one end and we're pulling to stretch this guy's arms, and we have to hold this thing while he's being questioned. But once we come up with a ratcheting system, we can just lock it into place and have a cup of coffee, just walk away, come back in an hour, see what he thinks about it then. It's just mind blowing that when you follow it, how crazy it is.
It's so again, I've wondered, like, where did it come from? I kind of in some ways feel like people just had too much time on their hands.
It makes you wonder, right?
Yeah. There's nothing. I mean, I don't know. I don't think books were very freely available around that time. Right. Certainly not if you weren't a part of a particular class of person.
Right. That's right.
You have a job. You're the chief torturer of a particular army, or a particular king or a particular duke. I mean, there's nothing else much for you to do aside from drink, fuck, and think, okay, how am I going to be brilliant at what I do?
That's exactly right. I guess if that's your profession and that's what you've got to do, and if you don't have a whole, cell block full of people you need to be working on, so to speak, I guess that leaves some time to sit around and think of some crazy stuff, But now, of course, there were traveling, it's crazy to think of too, traveling executioners and torturers back in the day that would go from, they would cover a specific area, like maybe, we've got London's different because it's so huge and they had their own, but we'll use that as an example. Maybe we got a guy that he works London and Manchester and Staffordshire, and that's the places he goes. So along the ways he sees things and goes, oh, I think I'll take that home and I'll try that out. And so there was a bit of sharing, there was certainly their own, not to kind of make it similar, but in a lot of ways, when you have like guilds, guilds and unions or biker gangs. You very much had that same kind of thing with the torturers, the executioners. They had their own, underbelly of the world, and they were not able to just happily frolic with the normal members of society, so to speak. So they
Yeah.
had their own groups they hung out with, and there would be a lot of information sharing there too. They had their own, jargon, and it's very interesting to dig into.
Well, it also gets you thinking, how competitive were they?
Right.
Surely there must. I mean, it's human nature. There must have been some
Right.
degree of competition. It's like, okay, you think you can pull a man's tongue out cleanly? let me show you what I've just invented.
Right. Exactly. I am sure that I would be stunned if there was nothing like that. It just wouldn't be, like I said, it's human nature. It's impossible for it not to have happened.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we've got Fall of the Leaf.
Yep. So Fall of the Leaf is part of the part of the jargon that we just kind of referenced is slang for hanging is what it is. So it's a song about hanging and how to properly, it sounds weird saying it like this, how to properly place the noose, which is supposed to go behind, the left ear. It's supposed to be there. That's what they had found is the best. Think how much trial and error went into that. You know what I mean? How many people just hung there, just suffocating, strangling until they died, as compared to later on, oh, well, if we do it this way, we can break their neck quick. It's just, again, how many people had to go through that experimentation?
100%. It's also another thing when we talk about these things that blows my mind is the those were public spectacles back in the day. I mean, and I guess it's no surprise because people used to attend the circuses, and there were pretty horrible things that happened there. But a public hanging used to be something that everybody in the town would go and attend.
For sure, yeah, right there in the area of London. Again, saying it wrong. You had the Tyburn tree, a huge spectacle there when they'd have hangings. There's supposed to be a marker there somewhere on the ground that marks the ballpark area where it originally was. But, you would have all kinds of criminal activity were happening in the crowd, pickpockets, everything you can think of. So when you think about it, like if you're having a public hanging, because you're hanging 5 or 10 people because they're criminals, and they've been stealing and mugging people and so on and so forth. It's not really having perhaps the intended outcome of, discouraging criminal activity when literally in the crowd they are, engaging in criminal activity that the people are being hung for. I always thought that was kind of interesting. But again, large groups of people get together, anything can happen.
What is it in time that you think has made people change so radically from that to where we are nowadays? Or here's another question: do you think we actually have changed radically, or is that in human nature and it's just suppressed nowadays?
It's a good question. I think going with the latter first, I think that there is a certain amount of it that's suppressed, and I'm not talking bad about this at all, but when you look at the world of, say, UFC, MMA, this, that, and the other, we got 2 guys in a cage banging it out. Now, of course, it devolves most of the time into jiu-jitsu, which is fine, but, we have 2 guys in the ring or the octagon banging it out and doing their thing. And I've often thought, if this was a pay-per-view thing and you just threw a couple knives in there, how many people would watch it? And I think we'd be shocked at how many people would pay to watch that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I think the numbers would be there to support something like this. So we end up back into Rome and then the gladiators, right? We just end up right back there again. I think it's, again, there's a certain part of human nature that is very interested in that for whatever reason. I have no idea why. I can't say why somebody would be interested or not interested, but it's definitely there. As far as changing, do you mean changing from like criminal behavior or?
Well, I mean, the death penalty was still very commonplace less than 100 years ago.
Correct.
Now there's a very emotional, kind of very reflexive response to it anytime that you bring it up. I mean, there's still a lot of people that support it.
Sure.
But again, generally speaking, most governments don't really do it anymore,
Right.
Unless you're in Texas or in Florida.
Right.
Certainly in I think the vast majority of Europe, it's not, it's absolutely not something that they would ever touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not sure what causes that, to be honest with you, because maybe it's looked at more as like a vigilante type thing. I don't know, as opposed to justice, for lack of better terms for those. Maybe lots see, if you have a person that comes in and murders a family of four, for example, they say, well, putting him to death isn't going to do anything. It's not going to bring the people back. So we'll just make him sit in prison for the rest of his life. Simply killing him would be, more an act of revenge than justice. I'm not sure. And I also think that's a very personal thing. It's especially if you're a survivor of something like that. Maybe it was a family of five and you got away. Well, your feelings might be very different than a politician or somebody that's a news anchor. I don't know, but lots of things have changed and lots of things remain the same. London is such a great example when you look at all the murders and things that have happened since its inception, and it still goes on. And we have it, of course, in the United States. You pick your major city, and it's going to have stabbings, rapes, blah, 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 all the same stuff that we were hanging people for a couple hundred years ago, still here today. So, and I don't know why. I don't know why that has continued. I don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's also, there's always that counter argument when it comes to when people say, well, it's not going to change anything. Well, the counter argument, well, it'll prevent that person from doing it to anybody else.
Right, exactly.
And unfortunately, I mean, I think there's a point where people are stumped on either side of the argument, right?
Yeah, right.
Which again, then to your point, it becomes a very personal thing. I mean, my view on policing is closer to Judge Dredd than perhaps many others. I grew up in South Africa, so I know what it's like to have a gun pulled on me.
Exactly. Well, if you look at just to slightly off topic real quick, but look at Jeffrey Dahmer, who the majority of people that listen to the death metal in this podcast know who Jeffrey Dahmer is. Okay? Yeah. So we're not going to put Jeffrey Dahmer to death, but he can't do it to anybody else. Okay, fine. And there's people in prison with him that we didn't put to death because they can't hurt anybody else, but yet they killed Jeffrey Dahmer. So then you say, well, yeah, but it's Jeffrey Dahmer. Nobody really cares, right? He got put to death. He was killed by inmates. Well, then, okay, then why isn't the death penalty for Jeffrey Dahmer not okay? It's very interesting. I don't know. It's a super complex thing, and it's fun to get into debates and to talk about it, but it is very interesting.
Well, have you seen the footage of taken outside the prison when they put Ted Bundy to death?
Yes.
There were people cheering.
Absolutely. They had signs and everything.
If memory doesn't fail me, like the lights, like the electricity went off briefly when they were putting the...
Did it really? I don't know.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
What did they electrocute or did they poison him? Method of execution.
Yeah, there you go. I do remember seeing footage of people outside holding up signs and everything else.
Yeah, electric chair. And there was like a brief flickering of the lights so they knew it was happening and people were cheering.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So, interesting.
If you've not seen it yet, I'm sure you have, but that Ted, I think it's called the Ted Bundy tapes on Netflix is fucking brilliant.
That was really good. I hope they do many of those, whatever they have, you know what I mean? Like, I know they don't have this kind of information on everybody, but I thought it was extremely interesting.
Yeah. They did that one. They did John Wayne Gacy, and they did my favorite of all the Netflix serial killer documentaries was the one they did on the Night Stalker, which for some bizarre reason a lot of people seem to not like, but I thought it was absolutely excellent. And again, maybe that's because it was kind of, again, I grew up in the 80s and in the 90s. Right. So it was a bit more. I mean, I was only single digits old when the Night Stalker happened, but it was still something that kind of I felt loomed in the background because I also got into AC/DC at a young age, and there was that connection between AC/DC and the Night Stalker. So it was. I've just always had there's certain things in life you just have that bizarre almost. It's like a default interest you have in it. I've also got a default interest in Woodstock 99.
Really?
that was the end of my adolescence. I was 19 years old when that happened. For whatever reason, again, I anything that I possibly can read, see, watch, listen to about Woodstock 99, I devour straight away.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like it though. Everybody has their own things, man. I mean, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. All right, we move on to track number 3, Teresiana.
Oh, yeah. So Teresiana was a noble in Austria, and what they were doing at that time was they're trying to step away from some of the old world brutal torture techniques and execution techniques. We're going to reach a more enlightened age. We're not going to do this anymore. So you had the Codex, this Code of Teresiana came out in her name, and it was just all the old stuff again. Nothing new here. We're just going to use the old stuff.
Repackage. So instead of a whipping, we're going to call it a flogging.
Exactly. That's basically what it was. So I thought it was so interesting that we're just going to repackage it. We're going to keep doing what works, in our opinion, and just repackage it. But I thought it would be kind of a cool subject matter. And I just thought Teresiana was kind of cool for the name, not only because it is directly the subject, but it's just a little bit different, So that was kind of the thought process behind that one.
Isn't it fucking wild, though, how in some cases these were decisions taken collectively? Like, even if you go to the Second World War, I watched Zone of Interest the other day, and it's a fucking incredible movie because it shows very matter-of-factly the thinking around Auschwitz and the thinking around what was happening there. And it blows my mind to think there were people that were sitting in a meeting like the one that I would have at work talking about, work stuff.
Right.
And they're actually having discussions about and making decisions about these absolutely horrific things that they're going to do to human beings. And I mean, in this instance, I would assume it would have been something quite similar. It's not just a decision taken in isolation. People sat around and said, this is what we think we're going to do.
Right. Well, I mean, if you look back, using Auschwitz or whatnot as an example, it takes more than one person to carry this thing out. So if we're going to torture people, go back to the Middle Ages, if we're going to torture people, ultimately execute them and et cetera, and then we have to deal with their property and, so on and so forth. Yeah, that's more than one person. You're going to have meetings about this. You're going to have things laid out, procedures in place for how to do this. And it is pretty wild when you think about it like that. No one said, "Hey, wait a minute, this seems kind of messed up." Of course, I get it. When you go back to Nazis and things like that, if you're the guy that stands up in the meeting and says, "Hey, no, wait a minute, this seems kind of messed up. I don't think we can do that." Well, it's probably over for you.
I'm about to say,
that's it for you and your family.
No dissent.
Right? It's over. So yeah.
All right. Next up, track 4 of Pillars and Trees.
Yeah. So super old school as far as the world of torture goes. Somebody had the idea that here we go again, if you take younger trees that are quite bendy, we get a couple people to pull these limbs down, we can tie a leg to one and maybe an arm to another one that's kind of close. And then when we let them go and they spring back to their natural position, they're just going to stretch you out naturally, and you don't have to do anything. And I thought, my God, that's really as simple almost as it can get. Tying someone to a tree and just letting a tree do its thing, I thought was very interesting. It goes way, way back. And then somewhere more of the pillar, larger trees, they would just tie them to for, flogging purposes or any kind of flaying or anything like that. So just a super old, and then, the old school type technique, and they would leave them up there forever just as a warning to others, of course.
I love the way that you write lyrics, by the way, because your lyrics, kind of like the way you deliver them, they have a natural rhythm to them as well. Like, constricted by means of a ring, offering no hope or clemency, trees forced over and held under pressure, legs are attached, ligaments to rupture soon. But it's like, there's a kind of twisted poetry to the way that that you're telling the story.
Yeah, right.
But as I said, there's sort of a natural rhythm to it as well.
I think that's influenced just from kind of, I don't mean like older music. When I say older music, I don't mean things from like, say, 40s and 50s, just kind of more poetry than anything really. Lyrics kind of used to always rhyme, from my experience. And that's a very poetic thing. So I almost look at lyrics, for better or worse, as being more of an experiment in poetry than being just lyrics to go into a song. And so that's kind of how I look at them when I write them.
Yeah, I do think it's I've spoken about it so many times on the show, but it's a lost art to me. Not a lost art, but it's an art that it separates the great bands from the okay bands.
Sure.
Is that ability to use your vocals as a hook.
Yes.
Because I mean, we all know, even if we don't just look at metal, but across many other genres,
Right.
vocal lines are used as a hook. But in metal, I mean, let's think of some of the greatest things that Frank Mullen ever did, or some of the greatest lines that Glenn Benton ever barked on those early Deicide records. And there is a distinct hook to the way that they are deploying their vocals.
Absolutely.
And it's just that to me is absolutely critical when it comes to death metal.
Agreed.
Having those typewriter vocals over it just doesn't work. It takes away.
Totally agree.
Yeah, it makes it go from sounding intimidating to just sounding cartoonish.
Yeah, I agree. And I understand that there's a certain segment of bands and fans that really don't care about lyrics. But to me, the lyrics add depth to the material you're trying to portray. For example, Teresiana, we'll use the latest as the example. Okay, so the song is named Teresiana and there's no lyrics. Okay, well, what the hell is that? Is that your girlfriend's name? You know what I mean? What is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there has to be something there, in my humble opinion. And it just gives more substance for the fans, something to get into.
Yeah, there's a lot of I mean, I've not seen the CD yet, but just everything from the art to the way that everything's presented, I love the fact that there's clearly a lot of investment and a lot of love that's gone into putting this album together. It's not just some bullshit that somebody's slapping 9 songs on and going, yeah, that's our new album. There's a huge amount of thought that's gone into this.
Yes, it is a monumental task. Putting this one together in particular is a monumental task of research, not just in what subject matter you want to use for lyrical, but what subjects you want for art. And it takes a lot of time to track some of this stuff down. And it's not just anything, it's just not something you just don't stumble across a page in a book and go, that's pretty cool, we'll use that. No, it really has to fit the entire project. So, I mean, I have no idea. It is countless hours that's spent on stuff like this. I have no clue what it would even be,
Yeah.
It was tremendous.
So track 5, we've got Tenailement. I don't know if I've just
French word.
That word.
Yeah, it's a French word. Allegedly, the best I have on it is Tenailement, and it's basically it's a very poetic word for pincers, basically. And how they were used, whether they were heated, red hot or not. It really doesn't matter if someone's coming at you with a pair of pincers and removing chunks of flesh. If it's scalding hot or not, it's going to be excruciating, no matter how you slice it up. No pun intended. But it's just the way it is. So I found that one interesting. What really captured me on it was the word. The foreign word sounds pleasant. Like, oh, well, that doesn't sound so bad. You know what I mean? We're gonna take you in and subject you to this. You go,
yeah.
That doesn't sound so bad. That sounds kind of nice. No.
Oh, dude, actually, that gets me back to my London dungeon visit.
Yeah.
One of the worst things they described is the pincers that they would heat up and they would extract somebody's tongue.
Yes, absolutely.
Holy Jesus! Like that. Right. That makes anything to do with breaking bones, removing teeth, fingernails going, and removal of the tongue. I'm immediately fucking creeped out by.
It's totally crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. I couldn't imagine.
No. All right. Maleficium is our next track.
Yep. So it's a song about witchcraft, basically. Different tools used during practicing witchcraft, so on and so forth. The belief of the individual in the song that, well, ultimately she's going to be executed, but she's not going to die anyway. She'll live on in some form or fashion to basically carry on her mission, if you will, or her obsession. And that's another subject I've always found pretty interesting, is witchcraft in general, and how it's changed over the years. How it was very much back in that day, well, just simply being accused and you're done. And now you can buy books about it on Amazon. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally okay. It's a celebrated thing. And I just find that interesting.
Yeah. I don't know how familiar you are with old English comedy, but did you ever watch Blackadder?
Blackadder? No, I've never seen it.
So there's a very famous episode of Blackadder called "The Witch Smeller Pursuivant," and I think there's actually like a doom band that call themselves the Witch Smeller Pursuivant as well. But
Really?
the Witch Smeller, it basically gets called to the kingdom, because there's a plague, and they think it's due to witchcraft, and he has to come and see whether or not it's witches doing this to people. So,
Sure.
The prince asks him, how will he identify whether or not it's a woman really is a witch or not, and he says by trial or by ordeal. If they take an axe and try and chop her head off, if her head gets chopped off, she's okay, she's not a witch. If the axe bounces off her neck, she's Satan's bedfellow and she must be burned alive. And it's so fucking horrible to think that that is literally how some of these people thought.
Well, sure. Yeah, you had the swimming. The witches was similar. If you throw a witch into the water and she sinks and drowns, well, she's good to go. She was all right. But if she floats, well, she's a witch, and we obviously got to burn her alive. It's like there's no winning.
If she sinks, well, she's dead now. But at least we know her soul.
At least we know she was innocent, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. 7 Nails is our next track.
Yeah, so that's inspired off of an archaeological find where they had found a woman who had 7 nails through her jaw. And so this goes back into kind of the witchcraft side, to where the belief is that she was a witch, and to keep her from casting spells during interrogation, they just nailed her jaw shut. And I thought, oh my God. That was wild to me.
Fucking eyelid is flickering. Just
right, exactly, right. So I thought, well, this will be some good subject matter, to write a song about, and that's where that came from.
Yeah. I've heard you talk about this before, but an observation I'd make. Maybe it's because I took the time to read the lyrics and understand what you're singing about, but it does feel to me like this band feels more gritty. It feels more impactful to me, the lyrics, than just, standard gore lyrics. Anybody can sit there thinking up some bullshit about, murdering women or, killing people, in horrible ways. But when you're pulling from something that really happened and is this horrific, it's kind of like comparing Breaking Bad to The Wire. The Wire is ultra gritty. It's art at a higher level than the popcorn fodder that is Breaking Bad.
Right. No, I appreciate that. I feel the same way. And like you said, I've talked about it before. And, we all like these bands that write that way. It's just, I just didn't want to do it, man. You know what I mean? I wanted it to be something more, I just look at it and thought, if we're going to spend the time and put forth the effort, then everything has to be that way. You can't just sit there and say, oh man, that was a great riff. And now we got a great song and we got a great name for the song. Who really cares about the lyrics? Just throw something in there. No one reads them anyway. It had to be, everything had to be on the same page. It'd be a package deal when you got it. Everything from the art to the lyrics to the music is all just this extreme, take you back to a different time type of vibe.
And back to your point about AI earlier, if people aren't going to put that level of effort into the music that they make or into the package that they're putting out, then actually they're almost accelerating our move towards AI. Because if there's no value in what you're doing, if you don't see value in the art that you're presenting to people, then it's very easy for a computer to take that over.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, I think it really comes down to the individuals that are creating it to understand what they're doing and realize the value in what they're doing, if there's value in it. Now, look, we could make some stuff right now that has no value in it with AI, and we don't care. Who cares? But if what you're doing, if you believe in it and you feel for it, you need to understand there's value in what you're doing. Somebody somewhere is going to appreciate the time and effort you're putting into this. So make it the best you possibly can. Make it. We really kind of wanted the album with the artwork and the music to be an experience. You know what I mean? I know it sounds kind of campy and, blah, 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 but it was one of those, when you crack this thing open and you're reading the lyrics and you're going through this, it's just kind of, you're in that space now.
Well, you mentioned earlier about the competitive element in the scene right now, but I mean, everyone is competing for people's attention. I mean, I know
Absolutely.
with this podcast, I'm competing for people's attention. It's a
Absolutely.
full episode of this podcast, not the whole conversation we're about to have, but
Yeah.
the full episode is normally about 3 hours long. It's 3 hours
Right.
of people's time that they have to invest in
That's
listening to that if they're going to listen to it end to end. And
That's
there has
exactly.
to be value in it. Otherwise, they're not going to do it.
That's
And I
exactly.
believe there's value, which is why I put it out in
Mhm.
the way that I put it out.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Glenn Danzig told me once in an interview that great music is always going to be great music. It doesn't matter what genre it comes from, what style it comes from. A
Mhm.
great song will always be recognized as a great song. And I kind of hold on to that as I desperately try and put aside the idea that AI could completely take away,
Right.
this scene that I love so much. But
Right.
yeah, we'll have to see. But I
Right.
would say, whilst there are people like you that have that mentality about their art and put that level of love and effort into what they do, I still cling to optimism. I feel like
Totally. Yeah.
I feel like we'll be in good shape for at least a while.
Right. I agree. I agree with that. I do. There's going to be people that do value what they do, and they're just not there. I mean, we know there are people out there that do what they do just to get the likes and get the bumps and to make it go viral. And that'll be the same way with the AI music or whatnot. But I do think the quality will rise to the top, will be appreciated by those that are really into it.
100% agree. Okay, track 8, Vredensdag.
Vredensdag, yeah. So Danish, again, we're dealing with witchcraft. It translates roughly into Day of Wrath. And basically, yeah, kind of coming back around to the witchcraft idea and how they dealt with it in Scandinavia versus maybe other places, which there's a lot of similarities, as you'd expect. When you talk about fire, I mean, that's a very basic element. It doesn't take a whole lot to make a big fire and throw someone in it. It really doesn't. When we were talking about engineering earlier, yeah, you might not have, I'm not suggesting they didn't, but you might not have the people in your area that are engineers that can build some of these things like the rack or whatnot. But anybody back in that day can build a fire. And if that's how you got to deal with it, then that's how you're going to deal with it.
Well, describe for anybody that doesn't know, describe what the Broquin actually was, because I read up about this a while back, and it's fucking wild.
It's wild. Yeah. So if you could imagine a box, let's just say it would go from your feet to your waist. Okay. And you're placed in this box. It will have 2 boards down the center in between your legs and boards outside of your legs. And then the idea is they bind your legs with a rope very, very tightly. The boards and everything are tied very tightly. It's a complete package here. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to take these wedges, wooden wedges or steel wedges, whatever we happen to have, and we're going to drive them in between your leg and the board. So eventually something's got to give. As that wedge gets deeper and deeper, something's going to break, and that's going to be your leg. Your legs are going to start to shatter without a doubt. The ordinary torture, so to speak, they would only drive 4 wedges in there. Wherever
I was just about to say there were different flavors of the Broquin.
Different flavors, yeah. So maybe, maybe we drive them, the first one down by your ankles or something. It's totally a dealer's choice. You know what I mean? It's whatever they want to do. So the ordinary torture, if you will, is 4 wedges, and the extraordinary torture is 8. So, the priest we were talking about earlier from Diabolical Edict who suffered this, allegedly it was so bad that bone marrow was flowing out from his bones, if you can imagine. So, you look back at the time these things happened, you may not die from the actual torture. Maybe you don't have a heart attack and die right there, from the extreme pain and stress. Maybe you don't. Maybe you survive it and they throw you in some cell, which of course is going to be extremely hygienic. They throw you in the cell to recover. Well, we certainly know infection is going to take you. It's just a matter of time. There's no doubt about it. So if you had to suffer through that, and they actually put it to you, you're not going to make it. Maybe somebody was placed in that and they gave them 1 wedge and they told them everything they wanted to know and they let them go and there was no shattering of the bones or anything like that. But if you were actually put to it the way it was designed, you're not going to make it.
Well, this is, again, just as a wider comment on society and how society views, like how modern society views its lot, particularly in the West.
Yeah.
The average life expectancy in the US was 47 years in 1900. It was 40 years in the year 1800.
Right.
And I think around 1765, which precedes this, it was about 39 years.
Right.
So when people think about their lives today versus what was commonplace, at the time that we're talking about, and they actually seriously say life is worse now than it's ever been. I mean, I've heard that sentence come from people verbatim.
For sure. Absolutely.
It's mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I've absolutely heard it too. So you look at it and you say, well, if it is, and you could go back in time, and you can pick whichever time you want, by the way, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Pick 1800, pick 1500, whatever you want. What are you willing to give up for that? You're certainly giving up your lifespan, bare minimum. That's off the top, So what else are you good with giving up? You're giving up, good with giving up good medicine. Are you good with giving up aspirin, for God's sake? You got a headache and you go to the cabinet and grab some aspirin. You're good with giving that up. I mean, it's crazy. Life expectancy now is obviously higher than it's ever been. It's pretty incredible when you stop and think, if you look at the American Civil War and going back at that time, 1860s, you're talking people didn't live on average, they didn't live to 60 years old. 50 years old, that's old men. That's an old man. 50-year-old is an old, broken down man who spent his whole life on a farm beating his body down. You know what I mean? Hard physical labor. So yeah, I've heard that too before, and it's just kind of a shake your head moment. Of I don't know. I wouldn't go back to as interested in all that stuff as I am. There's no way I'd want to be a citizen of the 16th century.
Fuck no.
God.
No, I wouldn't mind. I'll sometimes look at watch a movie like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I'll go late 60s, 70s. That must have been fucking awesome. Like being
I'm with you
of certain age at that time.
I'm with you. Yeah.
But then again, I mean, we've become so used to this life that we lead with the internet and with everything at our fingertips. I actually wonder if it really came to it, the cost of giving all of those things up.
Yeah.
Would that not really, would that not put us out more than we think that it would? I mean, you and I both grew up without the internet for a period of time.
That's correct. Yeah.
And oftentimes I have to sit there kind of questioning myself, like, am I thinking about that time with rose-tinted glasses? Like, was it really as great as I thought it was?
I don't remember when I was a kid. I don't remember hating being outside and playing. I don't remember hating running through the woods, and doing all that stuff. In fact, it was great. There really weren't a whole lot of alternatives, as far as that goes, as far as inside entertainment goes. You know what I mean? There's no internet, like you said, nothing like that. I don't know. I'm like you. I'm also very interested, like in 1940s and 50s lifestyles. I look at that and go, wow, there was so much happening. Like in the United States, we'll say with scientific development and what would be considered modern technologies of the day. And it seems fascinating to me. I don't know. I think just electricity in its own. If electricity were to go down for a week, what would happen? I don't think it would be good.
I've read many articles on that right now, and they're talking about like if there's an EPMD attack, something like that, like what would happen,
right?
And I think the estimated death toll is in the millions inside of a month.
Is that right?
Because refrigeration is gone, so you'll have chronic food shortages, imminently. Electricity isn't going to the hospitals anymore, so basically you could write off anybody that's in ICU or like that. It's staggering. It's absolutely fucking staggering to think of what would happen if just that one variable was to be removed. You remove electricity.
Yeah. That's
the thing is, I think I don't know whether you've lived in a city where you've had large scale riots. When I was around for the London riots in 2011 or 2012.
Yeah.
But I mean, that turned fucking nasty really, really quickly.
Right.
It was one of the first times in my life that I saw how quickly a group of people can go from being a little rowdy to being like, okay, now this is really fucked up now. Like people need, can't go into London anymore.
Right.
Naturally, this being the UK, the government took days before they deployed the single riot van that they had, and by that point, the riot was over. But for a period of time, it was a complete and utter fuck up.
Yeah, I bet it was. Yeah, no, I've not lived in a city that's experienced that, thankfully, but I can see where large groups of people can quickly just become out of control.
Yeah,
And there's nothing you
100%.
can do. Nothing you can do against that. I mean, it's just like you said, you can roll out your one riot van, but that's not going to do a whole lot. You got
No.
10,000 people there.
So, okay, second to last song, we've got Suffocation in Ash.
Yeah, interesting. Here we go again with ingenuity, so to speak, and engineering. You've got a room or a pit that is designed for this purpose. We've got a fire in there. We've got tremendous amounts of ash generated from this fire. We're using fans, large hand wheel turned fans to get the ash churning throughout the air, and then we throw you in there. So if you don't die quickly, which you won't because that's not the point from the fire, you have to inhale all this ash over and over again, slowly suffocating you. And I just thought, my God, here we go again with something really obscure, as far as an invention goes, with the sole purpose of being this. That's another one of those. How'd you think of this? We've all, if you've been around a fire, of course, and you inhale some ash or whatever, yeah, you cough and do whatnot. But I guess that would have been the catalyst to go, hey, if we did this on a larger scale, we could make this happen.
They're out roasting a goat or something like that. And it's like, I'm just, guys, you won't believe it, but I just came up with a fucking brilliant idea.
Exactly right. I know. It's a crazy one,
Yeah. Well, as you're talking about that, I'm actually thinking about fairy tales that came out around the same time as well. I was reading.
Sure.
I was reading a newer edition of The Three Little Pigs to my daughter when she was really young, and it was fucking horrendous. The pigs all survive. They become friends with a wolf, and they live happily ever after. I was like, I'm not going to fucking read you this rubbish anymore. You're gonna read the fairy tales your father read. So I bought like a really beautifully bound, Grimm Brothers fairy tales book, and I started reading some of the stories in that, and there I actually like do a double take. You've got Cinderella's stepsisters cutting their feet off to fit into the slipper.
Right, it's crazy.
You got Hansel and Gretel. You've got cannibalism. A witch being shoved into the. I mean, it's fucking insane. This was the stories they were telling kids.
Right, it's crazy. Right, I know it is. It's wild. And you look at it and say, okay, well, I suppose there were some life lessons in there, to try and warn the kids about. But man, they really did do it graphically. You're right.
Yes, very.
Yeah.
It was like Stephen King levels of
absolutely.
Like there's several paragraphs sometimes dedicated to it.
Like you would never consider that would never happen. That would never show up in a kids section of a bookstore.
Hell no. And then finally we've got the title track of the record, Harbinger of Woe.
Sure. That and it also kind of ties into the album cover itself. A harbinger being someone who's bearing news. And bearing bad news. Clearly, the woman on the cover is not getting good news with what's happening there. We use several samples from various different authors that have written about torture for years in that book, or I'm sorry, in that track. And we really thought that would help kind of bring the message home because these are the people that are the experts in the field. You know what I mean? They're the guys that write all this stuff, and spend their entire lives studying this. So I kind of wanted to include them, unbeknownst to them, kind of wanted to include them in the track to deliver some of these quotes that they have. But it ties into the cover art too, where you see you've got a couple guys on the cover that are clearly in the middle of a debate or what they're going to ask her, this, that, and the other. There's one of the guys who kind of turned his back on the whole situation. He's not even looking at it anymore, but you get just from the snapshot of the cover, nothing good's happening here. Even if they say, you know what, we're done. She's already gone through who knows what that will last the rest of her life, as far as mental scarring goes. So that was kind of the idea with Harbinger of Woe. It ties into that. It ties into the idea of a guy as an executioner that is an expert in this realm. This is what he does, and he's the guy. If you need somebody like this, he's the guy. But it's interesting with executioners, so many of them that were at the top of their craft, if you will, were also in many times a local town doctor because they had such a good understanding of injury because they saw it daily. They knew how much blood a victim could lose before they were just gone, so they could tourniquet that off and carry on with what they're doing. But they walked a fine line, because if they were going out into the woods to pick natural remedies, and if you're using too many of those, well, we're getting close to that witchcraft line. So you got to be pretty careful. You know what I mean? So it's a very interesting thing, and it was different everywhere. The Germans might look at it differently than the English. Maybe the Germans were a little bit more open to using natural remedies, but the English were like, nope, you're a witch now. Just making it up. That's not actually the case. But every area had their own tolerances, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Now, question for you: are you going to be coming out to Europe at some point soon? To play and or visit some of these spots?
So when it comes, it's a funny thing about this is I've been fortunate enough to see some spaces in Europe just going as a tourist, not coming for music. And I found it more successful to come as a tourist, because you have time to do things instead of just going to show or whatnot. So London has been this, what's a good way to explain it? London has been a very much moving target for me. I've landed in the airport there probably half a dozen times, but I've never had time to leave the airport and go somewhere because there wasn't enough time in a layover, which is horrible because there's so much there. And I was like, my God, I got to do this, but there's just never been the opportunity. London's on the list of absolute must be ats. Like there's too much there. I've written too much stuff about it, read too much stuff about it to not be there. Germany also, I've seen several things in Germany, but the city of Nuremberg itself has escaped me. And I'm just decided that when it comes to London and Nuremberg in particular, those two cities, they're just going to be trips. I'm just going to have to do it because that's the only way I'm going to see it.
Well, I don't live in London anymore. I'm about 70 miles away, but you have an open invite. If you ever come over, let me know for sure. Much. Provided you eat meat.
Oh yes, I do.
We'll find loads of things to do. We'll go have some decent steak, and we'll go see a few. We'll see a few sites.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I would love to do that, and thank you very much for the offer. I'll absolutely take you up on that when that
it's
day
enshrined on this episode now, so I can't.
Right, that's right. So that being said, what's the good time of the year to be there if there is a good time?
Actually, now is a pretty good time.
Is it a pretty good time? June is good.
Summertime is great in London because everybody is in a fucking exceptionally good mood.
Really?
Because we have such a short window of it.
Yeah, so right.
You have, I'd say, I mean, some years it's better than others. I'd say normally about 4 weeks worth of what you would reasonably call summer, especially if you're from the southern hemisphere.
Yeah,
the rest of the time is fucking raining and cold and everyone's miserable. You'll get to a point with the weather where people will go, I'm done with it now. I want it to be autumn. And it's like, but you spent the last 6 months bitching about how cold it is.
Right. Yeah, no, I get it. That's fine.
So, I'd say, I would say June, July, August. Great time to come visit.
Same here then. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you absolutely have an open invite, and this has been such a pleasure, Jamie. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been a great conversation, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Take care of yourself, brother.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
That was a track called Diabolical Edict. The band, of course, Brodequin, featuring the vocal and bass stylings of my guest this week, Jamie Bailey. Of course, it's taken off their brand new album, Harbinger of Woe, and I really wasn't exaggerating when I said, in my view, this is probably the best comeback record in the history of death metal. There have been a lot of bands that have put out a lot of extremely good albums, but this is a band that was away from the scene for 17, 18 years, came back and put out a record that is just absolutely crushing. And unsurprisingly, it's featuring on a lot of people's mid-year best list. It'll almost definitely be on my top 30 of 2024. There's no doubt about that. It's available, of course, on Season of Mist Records, so if you do want to check it out, if it has flown under your radar for whatever reason, then head over to their Bandcamp. I'll post a link in the description to the podcast, and like I said at the beginning of the show, Jamie's going to be back on this podcast without a doubt. It would be so fucking cool if he came over and we did a little tour of things like the London Dungeon and just some of the sites here in the UK, and maybe recorded an in-person podcast that way. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. No reviews this week. I'll do a proper review roundup next week. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. It has been a bear's asshole of a week. I had a couple of things not quite go my way work-wise. Things that took a huge amount of time investment from me and just didn't pay off the way that I wanted. Nothing insurmountable, but it was still a bit of a setback, and it has left me good and pissed off. But doing this episode, doing the podcast, it helps me release some of that tension. Speaking of tension release, if you think that the TV show Friends is superior to Seinfeld, you're a fucking idiot, and you need to hit the bricks, because this is Mike Scandato and I bringing you the weekly news rant.
A roundabout for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
Sheriff Scandato, welcome back to Into the Necrosphere, another news rant. How have you been, sir?
I am okay. It's good to be back. Thank you so much for having me here, Jackie.
Of course. It's long overdue for us to do another one.
Yeah. Been a couple months, but I'm okay, holding it down in good old Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah. We were talking about this right before we hit record, about you having some challenges over the last couple of months with tinnitus.
Yeah.
What's been because I know that had you out of action a little bit with Necromaniacs. What's been I guess what has aggravated it? I mean, I can only assume it comes from years and years of playing in hardcore bands and going to live shows and stuff like that. But had something happened recently to aggravate it or to make it flare up and become a bigger problem than it had been previously?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've actually had it since it was November of 2018. That's when I first got it, and when you have it, you pretty much have it for the rest of your life. But I've largely over time what's called habituated it, meaning it's there, but you don't really hear it much anymore, and it's kind of like in the background. And basically the only time I was hearing it for quite a while was at bedtime, and even then, it's something that you get used to. Your brain gets used to it. And it's something to point out for listeners or people who might not know, tinnitus or tinnitus, both pronunciations are correct, is actually in the brain. It kind of happens via the ears and the ear canal, but the sound is neurological.
I didn't know that. I thought it was to do with actual damage to your ear canal or your eardrums, or something directly related to the ear.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's due to noise exposure. That's how I got mine. Some people get it from other means, head trauma, etc. There's other ways to get it. Mine is basically a life in music and headphones and live performances and things like that. But around late May of this year, like a month and change, It just kind of really came back heavy and like with vengeance, let's just
Mm,
say. And I personally think it may have been from the volume of concerts I'd been going to in May. I went to quite a few.
mm.
And then my girlfriend and I went to this music festival in California. And again, I wore hearing protection at all of these, mind you, each and every one.
What kind of hearing protection, just out of interest?
There's one called Earpiece, which is a good one. It's like about 30, $40 a pair, you know. Um, and it takes down about maybe 26 to 30 decibels, which is quite high, actually. Certain earplugs, if you look at the amount of decibels they reduce, it's not that much.
Mm,
But honestly, my audiologist and ENT told me that it just that might not even been the reason. It might have just come back because of the condition itself. And you get what's called spikes. And I am in the midst of a spike, basically,
mm.
where the volume is much louder and you're noticing it much more. The good news is I feel a little bit better than I did 4 weeks ago, that's for sure. And I'm actually working with a tinnitus specialist to kind of help me through this kind of bump in the road. And I've just kind of been taking it easy. Like I haven't been to a show in 4 weeks. The last show I went to was actually the Abath show with Black Anvil,
Mm.
where my girlfriend and I took that photo with Abath. And yeah, that was like a very, very loud show, I felt like. I don't know. I mean, the buzzing and ringing had already kind of come back, but I went to that show anyway, again with hearing protection. And it kind of, made me go, you know what? I think I need to chill out for a little bit
Yeah.
because it's really, really loud. It felt like it's the loudest it had ever been. But time is of the essence. Like time is important. It does get better with time. And I'm just, I'm doing everything I can to just kind of feel better and give my ears a bit of a rest. It's also the central nervous system and
Mm.
stress that has a lot to do with it, flaring up tinnitus. Um, and it sucks because tinnitus stresses you, and stress is a cause of tinnitus. It's this
Yeah.
like loop,
Yeah.
you know, which kind of is unfortunate, but it is what it is. I mean, essentially, I've had it for 6 years. I've just been fortunate that it has been under control for most of the
Mm.
time. But I've just done a lot of reading, and there's a lot of very helpful uh, YouTube channels and companies out there that were not there, I feel like 6 years ago, which is
Mm.
good. But again, it sucks, but I'm gonna fucking I'll be okay. I'm gonna get through this. It's just gonna take some time, bro.
Yeah. No, I think I mentioned to you offline. My mom has got very severe hearing problems, and so that I'm particularly sensitive to that because she was never somebody that was exposed to a lot of loud music, and my concern has always been that it's hereditary. I went between 2002 and about 2010 to probably upwards of about 600 to 700 shows. And I had really brutal ringing in my ear, especially with my ears from about 2008. I think I had a almost self-imposed exile where shows became more like, maybe a handful per year rather than, several per month.
Yeah.
And that was, for nearly a decade. And it's kind of been the same, since I've moved out into the countryside. This year, the only shows I've been to have been the bands I saw at Inferno and the bands I saw at Fortress. I haven't been to anything else.
Mm.
And honestly, I actually think it's for the better. My hearing is I don't have ringing in my ears anymore. My hearing is fine. I can hear it's a little bit compromised from time to time, but I actually think that break, exactly as you just said there, I think time is extremely important.
Yeah, I mean, I have moderate hearing loss in both ears.
Mm,
And the hearing test I took recently was pretty much the same as the last one I took in 2019, which is good, which
Yeah.
means my hearing has not really deteriorated in 6 years, 5 years, which was I was happy to see. But it's the tinnitus itself is again, it's something that is going to flare up from time to time. And I mean, this is literally my first real flare up slash real spike
Hmm.
ever, actually. You know, it was rough going in late 2019, late 2018 into 2019, but by like that spring of 2019 summer, I mean, I was just so busy and I was doing a lot of traveling and I was playing shows and living my life and again, that's kind of the best thing to do with this is to live your life and to not let it fuck you up, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But this one really caught me by surprise, honestly. It really was upsetting,
Yeah, I
because
can
I
imagine.
thought I'd kind of gone past it. But again, it's just something that I know deep down will get better. And I just need to let it get better and to not kind of, you know, beat myself up over it. That's
Mm.
the other thing. It's like it's easy to do that, but you really shouldn't do that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a part of life. And for so many musicians, I mean, I know musicians and people in bands who have it. Um, and it's something that they have to deal with. And yeah, look, it could be a lot worse. It could be much worse. I'm largely a healthy man still. You know, I could have a far more serious ailment, right?
Hmm.
But it just sucks. It sucks. It sucks out your peace and quiet, which is the worst part. Like,
Yeah.
there's never any peace and quiet. Um, but again, it's something that I'm gonna get through,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about it, man.
No, of course, man. Of course. All right, well, let's dig into it. Starting on metalstorm.net, I'm going to give Motionless in White a skip.
Oh boy.
But we've got Defiled announcing a new album release. Let's have a quick gander. I see there's a new song. All right, so let's talk about this. Horror Beyond Horror has
Mm.
been set as the official title of the newly announced Defiled album, dropping on September the 20th, 2024. It was produced by Yusuke Sumita and engineered by Shinshiro Hamada and Keisuke Hamada. I feel like I don't know what exactly is causing it, but there's a lot of bands who've been going in Japan for quite a while,
Mhm.
and it feels like their profiles are being raised quite a bit this year in particular. Obviously, we had the Coffins album. I'm trying to think of a couple of other examples, but it just definitely I feel like there's not this like metal in Japan and metal in China has always kind of been this really sort of niche within a niche within a niche within a niche, if you know what I mean. And it doesn't quite feel like that to me anymore.
Yeah.
Defiled obviously is on Season of Mist. Coffins was on Relapse Records. Maybe it's the fact that more record labels are paying attention to the scenes over there because there's some very, very good bands in both countries.
Yeah, absolutely. Very rich metal history, extreme metal history. Nuclear War Now Records had one of their fests there earlier this year where Beherit chose Japan to play one of their first shows in decades, back. And, Blasphemy played there. And then you have like, the classic bands of the black metal genre, like Sabat and Abigail and Psy, who are like the Trinity
Yeah.
of Japan over there. And then there's on the death metal side, of course, Coffins, I think has put out one of the best records of this year. So yeah, I mean, definitely uh Japan's making moves.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's hear what Defiled sounds like. They've got a track here called To See Behind the Wall. Don't know what it sounds like. I don't actually think I can even recall what Defiled sounds like. So this is a first for me.
I remember the name. Yeah.
Yeah!
I had a smile on my face because the music video reminds me so much of like death metal from the early 90s. It's got that upturn, like the camera upturned at 60-degree angle. Someone has clearly, got a fan below the dude to have his hair blowing in the wind. But the song is pretty cool. There's a bit of an Asheron vibe to this. For whatever reason, I'm getting Asheron vibes from the riffing. But I'm liking this.
I didn't like it. I gotta say, wasn't into it. Didn't like the vocals. They literally have been around since '92, and this is like their 9th or 10th record. I don't know how many OGs are in the band at this point, but I don't know. The vocal, it almost sounded like I do hear a little bit of Asheron that you're saying. I hear a little bit of that, but I also hear I hear almost like a touch of bad, like metalcore almost. Am I crazy? Like almost like tough guy-ish stuff. I don't know why. I hear it. Maybe it's the vocals.
I was about to say maybe you're picking that up through the vocals, I would say the vocals you kind of need to set aside the fact that the guy sounds a little constipated, and also that his accent is really, really pronounced, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Max Cavalera has made a whole entire career on on his accent being pronounced. But vocals, I would agree with you, sound a little bit constipated, and equally, it doesn't sound like something that I've not heard before. But there was a bit of a charm to it to me, and maybe it's because of it. It feels like when you said that they've been around since 1992. It feels like the video was recorded in 1992. Yeah, and maybe that's where some of the charm comes from.
Yeah, I mean the video is rough. It to quote the great Simon Cowell, it's a no from me. It's a no from me.
All right. Okay, let's move on, because I know we're about to get to something pretty big, but before we do, Groza have put out a new song called Dysrhythmian Dreams. It says here, Dysrhythmian Dreams is the first advanced single from Groza's forthcoming studio record Nadir, that is out now and available for streaming with an official music video directed by Tim Hanker Ziles. Never heard of Groza before, but I have seen a fair few people talk about this on the socials. So I know a couple of people are pretty excited about it. Let's hear what this one sounds like. Initial impressions.
Initial impression is we've got yet another entry into the school of Migla.
Yeah.
Nuada and Garea. And this is the German version, Groza. Doesn't suck. Does not suck. Nothing new under the sun, but does not suck. I would check out more of it. I would give the album a listen. It's the hide the face black metal is kind of on fire right now, huh?
Yeah, very much so. Hide the face black metal and only go by your first initials black metal, because
Yes.
everybody in the band introduces themselves as PGUA
Yes. Migla
THZ
has, I mean, they are the Black Sabbath folks of this.
of the acronym
Yeah.
named Hide Your Face black metal style. Yeah.
And still the best, in my opinion. I'm sorry. You know, no, this isn't terrible. I mean, this is better than Defiled. I mean, let's be honest. Different genre of music, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Uh, I would check out a bit more. What about you?
This is very much more on the UARDA side of that spectrum that you just
Yeah.
mentioned now, and I
Hmm.
am not a fan of UARDA. I've tried many, many times to see what the fuss is about.
Me neither.
I don't like I don't like melodies like the ones they're using there. It sounds to me like something that a 15-year-old would write in the late 90s. Somebody who had just gotten into dissection, or had just gotten into, they were listening to Slaughter of the Soul and Storm of the Light's Bane almost daily. They wanted to start a black metal band. This is the kind of music they would write. It lacks intensity and it lacks severity for me. That's my problem. It's well played. I get that someone that likes the style of black metal is probably going to think this is very good,
Yeah.
but this isn't really my cup of tea when it comes to black metal. And when I think of the standard of music that's come out in 2024, this lags pretty far behind.
Yeah, it almost okay, it's black metal, but it almost has like a happy video game sound.
Yes, yeah.
Like,
It sounds like somebody whistled a tune and they said, "Oh, that sounds pretty cool. Maybe if you tremolo pick it and put it through a distortion pedal, it'll sound fantastic."
yeah, like, but again, though, people are going to say, well, Mike, a moment ago you said it's not terrible. Well, because it's not terrible. I mean, I could see people digging this, you know?
Yes.
Um, but but yeah, it's tricky. Number one, how you said, like, there's such, like, better stuff out there right now. And number two, the school of Migla is a lot of trees are coming, a lot of branches are coming out of the tree. And you
Yeah,
know,
that is a perfect way to describe it.
yeah, yeah.
Some branches much more attractive than others, because I like Guerrilla. I mean, I know they've attracted a few boos from the gallery over the years. I like them. I mean, Mwa I absolutely love, but this just to me just there's a punch that's missing here.
Yeah,
If I
like
think
it's
of the
funny. It's almost as if for the more real black metal, underground heads, or as J Dog of House Headbangers would say, for the Cavolts only just like Migla and Migla only. They don't like
yeah.
Korea, they don't like Urata, they will not accept any face covered black metal other than Migla. And then, well, of course, if you want to call Midnight face covered black metal, they like Midnight too. But you know, it's a tough crowd out there.
It is. But again, you've got 24 hours in a day, of which most of us work a good, 8 to 10. There's a whole bunch of things that we need to invest our time in. Am I going to invest my time in this rather than the new Hordem Rife, or the new Blaze of Perdition, or the new Ulcerate, Permafog? I mean, the list is endless. Very unlikely. That's how I see this. I mean, I'm still at a point where I'm going back and discovering stuff from 2020 and 2021 and 2022 that I missed. There's a lot of gems that flew so far under the radar in those years. Just still waiting to be discovered on top of everything coming out this year, which is a very nice segue into the new Ecclese album, which Deborah Morty are streaming 10 days in advance of its release. So it says here, while there is still 1 week until the official release of their fourth studio album, House of the Black Geminus, black metal purveyors Ecclese offer in listening the entire effort of 6 tracks and 53 minutes in total via YouTube. Not even going to pretend that I've not heard this yet. I've had it for about 3 months. Deborah Morty very kindly sent it to me a while back. For anybody who hasn't listened to it yet, the Sinister Minister, Carl Hikara, did a really thorough breakdown with Nas Alchemeth of every single song on this album. Went through the story, the ideas behind all of it. It's an excellent episode of Soul Knox, his podcast. So make sure that you check that out if you haven't done yet. But are you an Achilles fan, Sheriff Scandato?
Okay. They are a band in which I just know the name. I know they're American from Colorado, much like our friend Carl. Um, I have not fucked with this band, so this is going to be a fresh new listen for me. I've just checked them out on Metal Archives, and the similar artist section, which I enjoy because I like to see what they're compared to. They all are also compared to bands I do not listen to, barring one, Deathspell Omega. Do they sound like Deathspell Omega?
I think there are some. I think there may be a couple of things that are similar, but no, I wouldn't necessarily say Deathspell Omega is the first band that comes to mind. Blood Aus Nord, I think, would be one.
Yeah, that's listed. Yeah. Never fucked with them. Know the name. Know that they're French. Nightbringer, a band, another American band that I just
also featuring
completely
Nas
eluded
Alchemeth.
me. And then a band called Oratos, who I've never heard of.
Also featuring Nas Alchemeth. It's kind of all his own music. So
and BCR Arcana and Dark Space. All bands I've never fucked with and know nothing about. So, fresh listen, man. Let's hear it.
Well, I'll play it to you in a second. I think just to preface for me, I think that Melano, their previous record that came out in 2020, one of the best albums, certainly of that year, in my view. In the 4 years that have followed, it is fast moved, worked its way up the ranks into being one of my favorite black metal albums of all time. It's one of the most intense, atmospheric, unique, and aggressive black metal albums that I've ever heard in my entire life. The expectations thus for House of the Black Geminus were sky high. So I'll talk about what I think of the album in a second, but yeah, just to say, like, I wasn't coming into this expecting anything other than 90 out of 10. So let's give you the first. I think it's the first song. Has got a pretty lengthy intro, but it's useful to hear it because the way that the song builds up, the payoff is ample. So I'll hit play. I know I let it run a little long, but I needed you to hear the build up and then the explosion. What are your initial impressions?
You're not going to like them.
What?
Yeah. No.
Don't like it.
Meandering, boring, no riffs, no hooks.
Wow.
No. Snoozy.
No, I
It's
absolutely love it. Love it.
it's
Like, but yeah, go ahead.
all right. Like it actually has some Deathspell Omega-ish qualities to a bit. Not like it's not a copy or anything. But Deathspell is a bit of a different animal. I don't know. I don't know if I like this kind of epic, meandering, snoozy black metal. Like, I think I like my black metal to be a bit more kind of like on the attack and a bit more out the gate. I don't know. I feel like I bet the songs are very long and have a lot of parts.
They're all kind of 7-8 minutes long. At least.
Yeah. I again, I could see how people can dig it, but not this black metal fan. No.
Not Sheriff Scandado.
Not Sheriff Scandal.
You're a disgrace.
It's another no for me. I gotta be honest. I couldn't get into it.
I will say right now I will call this, unless something staggering comes out this year. I don't see another album being better for me than this album. This has every single
wipes the floor
thing.
with this.
What's that? Sorry.
Coffins wipes the floor with this.
Coffins
wipes the floor with it.
No, to me this has everything that I love about black metal. Incredible atmosphere, unbelievable dynamic build up. I love that electronic element that he's put into this song in particular. I mean, it's like very, very densely layered. One of the bands that at least gets compared to on Metal Archives is the Runes of Everast, and I can see some overlap there, but I mean, this to me is just, it takes the menace and the aggression and the violence of really every great black metal band I've ever been into, distills it into just this complete assault on your senses. I mean, I don't know how many tracks he's working with at any given time. It sounds like it's in excess of at least 40 to 50. It's just this barrage that hits you, song after song. And I mean, it's a difficult band to introduce to somebody in a setting like this, and to say there's 3 minutes of an Eccles track, make a decision on what you think of the band. I do think it's something that grows on you a little bit, but it has really grown on me. My expectations were very high, like I said. This album completely blew those expectations out of the water. It's the album of 2024, in my opinion. I've listened to it now many times.
I'm sorry. I don't know if I could get through an album of this band. So
let's jump to another one.
Okay.
And let's see if there's something that's like maybe the lengthy intro spoiled it a little bit. So I'm going to go to the second track, Maze of Obitor. This is the second single that they put off but they released off of this record, or the first single actually. So have a quick listen of this. See if that can sway you. So that song is a bit more straight to the point, right? No, not as much fluff at the start.
It's a little better. Um, I don't know. It just it sounds like something I've like a million different bands I've heard before. I don't know. Like it's just not striking a chord with me. Like I feel like it's
One
generic.
day, we're going to come back to this conversation. You're going
Okay.
to say, you know, Jackie, remember when you said Ecclesia's is great? I didn't believe you at the time, but then I listened to them again, and one day it just clicked for me. So, no, it's fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, in my personal view, I think it's absolutely incredible. I mean, I think I've got my top 3 albums for this year more or less locked down, barring anything incredible coming up. I mean, Ulcerate is definitely up there. The other one, I shan't say the name. I'll tell you when we finish recording, but I think people are probably going to be able to guess who it is. It has one of the greatest that I've heard the record many times. It's got one of the greatest moments captured on album in the history of music. People can read into that what they will. They'll know it when they hear it.
Did you like the last Holder record?
Yes, very much.
That's the black metal. I like that. Like
You like that?
I like that a lot.
I'm trying to think.
I like Spectral Wound. I like them a lot.
Yeah, New Spectral Wound sounds very cool.
Yeah.
A couple
I
of
mean,
records that I would recommend you check out then, if you haven't heard them yet. The new Permafog is very good. The new Inquisition is excellent.
yes, it is.
It's fucking
that
fantastic.
I like. They're probably never going to recover.
Yeah.
But they're still putting out good records.
On a completely different note, because you're a hardcore man, you know what album totally caught me by surprise this year? And I was in the gym, and you know, Spotify's got that like magic shuffle thing now, where you can shuffle and it'll play a song off of your playlist, and then it plays a song that it thinks you'll like, but something that's not on your playlist. So anyway, this band starts playing, and I'm like, this is fucking brilliant. And, you know, look to see what it was. The new Candy album. It's called Inside. It's Inside You.
Yeah, I got to check that. It's on
Fucking
Rewind.
sensational. Sensational.
They're doing a U.S. tour with Exodus, and I want to go to that in the fall. So yeah,
Jesus, them with Exodus.
yeah, it's an interesting tour. Havoc,
Very.
Candy, Exodus, and I forget who else. It's a 4-band tour. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very interesting lineup, because I mean they're not meat and potatoes hardcore. They've got a lot of electronic elements and stuff in their music, and the new single that they've put out. As a matter of fact, let's hear that single. I would love to hear what you think of this.
Okay.
Because this is not typical. It's not typical hardcore at all. And even I was listening to this going, this is so not the kind of thing I would normally listen to, and yet I can't get enough of the song. I must have listened to this track in one day about 50 times. So tell me what you think of this.
Wow. I mean,
It's
okay,
very,
I can
very
see
different.
hardcore purists wanting to burn this at the stake.
Oh, but so they'll hate it. The whole album
yeah.
doesn't sound like this, by the way. I think part of why this song is so cool is it's such a pattern interrupt on the record, because there's a couple of like super aggressive hardcore tracks, and then all of a sudden this thing hits you from nowhere. And I just think how the record is sequenced, where the song fits into the album, it's just fucking magic.
I would need to really hear the whole record. I mean, this particular track, one could make an argument and say this isn't even a hardcore song at all, because
No.
it kind of isn't a hardcore song at all. But that might be the idea, you know?
Yeah.
It's original. It's different. The video is cool. Them with Exodus is very strange.
This is exactly what I was thinking.
Very strange. But I guess props to Exodus for wanting to take a little chance, and props to Candy for getting on a tour with a legacy thrash metal band, I guess. So it's a little bit of give and take.
Let me ask you, when last have you seen Exodus play live?
2022.
Yeah, I saw them play in 2019 with, I think it was 2019. It was Obituary, Exodus, and Prong, and I was fucking blown away by how good Exodus were. They played like young men. It was nuts to me. It's like they literally played like a band who had something to prove.
Yeah, they were great, and Testament was great. But that night, I think Exodus might have been a little better. Death Angel was on the tour too, but there was so much traffic. My girlfriend and I missed Death Angel. So, but yeah, interesting. It's even for Relapse, it's kind of like, wow. Like, but then again, they've put out some very diverse shit for quite a minute, I don't know if it's something I'd ever listen to again, but it's definitely different.
Well, let me play you another song off the album, and you can you'll get the gist of why I said that's like a real pattern interrupter. This is the track that's right before the. Actually, let me not play that song. Let's play. I'm trying to think what the best song would be to play, just to kind of give you an idea of how much of a contrast there is across this record. This is a song called "You Will Never Get Me." Try this on for size, and let me know what you think of this. So you've got a hardcore there, but you've even got scratching, and you've got all sorts of crazy shit going on. As I said, I love it. It just, for whatever reason, it just hit me at the right time and just clicked with me. I think the album is fantastic.
I gotta tell you, the Exodus crowd, I don't know what the fuck they're gonna think of this.
I was about to say, like the 50-somethings in their battle vests.
Oh, they're not gonna like it at all.
No.
Anyone over 45 that likes this, I'd be shocked. I'm
44.
50. I'm 50, and I actually thought that was actually cool.
Yeah.
But they should be on tour with Knock Loose, Kubla Khan, and Harm's Way, Candy. That should be the tour, honestly.
Yeah.
Like those four bands. But they have a lot to gain in a way doing something with Exodus, but we'll see if they gain it.
Well, can you remember back in, I think it was like 2002, 2003, when Dillinger Escape Plan was going on tour with System of a Down? I mean, talk about a band that was just tailor-made to antagonize System of a Down's crowd, and they reveled in it, and arguably that's what helped make them as a band.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, that leap then was one thing, but now to me that is barely a leap. Like,
Yeah, well, that's true as well.
like Candy Exorcist is a leap. That's a fucking leap. And in 20 years, that's a leap.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
But I don't even think the Dillinger System of a Down leap is that big a deal. It was a big deal because Dillinger came from the underground hardcore scene. That's why it was.
Well,
I
remember
think
also at
that's
that time though, they hadn't put out any of their like more accessible stuff. I mean, I don't even
right. Oh
think
no, true,
Setting Fire to
true.
Sleeping Giants had been released by that point yet.
Right.
So none of those songs that that crowd could maybe latch onto, like Black Bubblegum or songs like that, none of those songs were in existence yet.
Yeah, they were in early Dillinger is kind of just noisy, weird, hardcore metal. Um, but again, rooted in hardcore. They played hardcore shows. Inhuman played a catering hall with Dillinger Escape Plan. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's humble beginnings for that band, and they've earned all of their success. Um, but yeah, Candy. Wow, I'm gonna give them. I'm gonna check them out more. I like
Check it
that
out and tell
band.
me what you think.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another album that I have completely fallen in love with, and is also on my top 30 for this year, without a doubt. Chelsea Wolfe's new record, She Reaches Out to, She Reaches Out to She.
Mhm.
There is a live performance here, and the reason I'm thinking about it is there's a live performance here that she did on KEXP. That woman's level of natural talent, like natural singing ability, it's on a level that I think 0.0000001% of the fucking entire planet's population from the beginning of time will have known that amount of talent. She's been doing these things recently where she's recording herself doing like cover songs. She did a Spirit Box cover song that she recorded on her fucking cell phone, but just with her and her acoustic guitar, and it sounds incredible. The woman is she's incredible. She's astonishing. And another thing, again, because the thumbnail is catching my eye, did you hear the Schizophrenia re-recording?
Just the one track. I keep hearing how great it is, though.
Bro, the absolute business.
Mm.
But anyway, okay, let's get on to some more new music. So, Escuela Grind launched a new single. It's called Distant Disruptor. As part of the new Decibel Flexi series, Escuela Grind put out a brand new track titled Distant Disruptor, recorded by Kurt Ballou at God City Studios, mixed and mastered by Nick Townsend. Escuela Grind, for the most part, are not a band I enjoy. I like Kurt Ballou very much. I think his production is absolutely second to none at the moment. I think he's one of the best guys working in heavy music. Escuela Grind, not my tempo, but
Me
your
neither.
thoughts on that? Shall we even
I
give
have
it a
not,
try?
I have not heard this track. Everything else I've heard from them, I have not enjoyed.
All right, well, let's hear if they can convince us
Let's hear it.
otherwise. Thoughts?
I'll say this. They have gotten better uh, and heavier and perhaps tighter. Uh, but still not my cup of tea. But that sounded kind of like modernish Napalm Death, didn't it?
I tell you what, it reminded me of an awful lot. Do you know a band called Call of the Void?
No.
They were also on, if I'm not mistaken, on Relapse Records. Fucking incredible band. They broke up back in, I think it was 2014. But if you've not heard it yet, check out an album called Dragged Down a Dead End Path. It is fantastic. Came out in 2013. To me, this is like a ripoff of Call of the Void, but without any of the charm, any of the hooks. And the thing that I don't like about the vocalist is I hate when women try to sound like men. I don't mind like women sounding extreme, like the woman from Holder, or actually Holder herself. She's got very extreme vocals, but there's kind of she brings her own character to it. She's not compromising on her femininity to sound like a certain way. Belinda from Johnny the Boy, she does it as well. I would argue she does it better than anybody. When women try to sound like men, it puts me off completely. I can't stand it. She's doing something with her mouth, like it's like she's trying to. I don't know whether she's cupping her microphone in a certain way, or whether she's like just like when she's singing, like the way that she's kind of pronouncing it, with the way that she's mouthing the words, she just does it in a certain way that feels very put on. It doesn't feel natural to me, and I hate that kind of vocaling.
I see what you mean, but again, I actually think this might be the best sounding thing I've heard from them. So I'm giving them a little bit of props. Uh, I just don't like all the baggage with the insane controversies about a roadie, and I just read all these ridiculous stories about
roadie molestation. Yeah.
No, the Creamy Chris thing. I just turned the whole controversy just turned me off to the band. That like I was just like, this band sounds like a lot of drama, which is a shame because again, that song was not bad. So I guess if I can put that drama aside, you know, uh, that song was not bad. It was better than Defiled. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, I would maybe say no. Actually, no, I wouldn't say it's better than the file. I think the Escuela Grind people. They sound.
Oh, I don't like the name. The name is.
It sounds fucking dreadful.
The name is not good. It's not a good name. Like
no,
it's important to have a good name. Don't you agree?
I 1000% agree.
Yeah, it's not a good name.
It's like there's another band, Harakiri for the Sky. One of the fucking stupidest things I've ever heard of in my life. I don't like. I'm from the school of maybe this is like because of my love for hardcore. What is better than Scott Vogel standing on stage going blah blah blah? With terror, and it's just everybody just it's short, sharp, catchy name. People respond to it straight away. Going nuts. Going on stage and going, "Hello, we're Harakiri for the Sky." It's like, just doesn't work.
And then having the kind of music you play in the name of your band. What is that? Like,
yeah,
it's almost like calling your band heavycore.
Yeah. It's like Testament changing their name to Testament of Thrash.
Or hard thrash.
Yeah.
What? Like, what are you doing? Like, anyway, yeah.
All right, Tribulation back with a new single. The Swedes in Tribulation are back and have unleashed their new single, Saturn Coming Down. Accompanied by a haunting music video, the single reveals a new side of the band while staying true to their dark sound and compelling melodies. Guitarist Adam Czar's comments on the new single and video release, Saturn Coming Down, is a song that creeps up on you and hopefully gets thoroughly under your skin. It's a taste of the new musical areas we've charted that takes us places we've never ventured into before, an ode to a very old titan who constantly seems to be lurking behind our backs. This is a band that has never been able to convince me whatsoever. I've never enjoyed their music, but I'm always open to being convinced otherwise.
Yeah, they were a part of the post-Ghost explosion, we're going to call it. Remember that?
Post-Ghost, yeah. No,
I remember.
What
this band was a part. Yes, that straight up. They had an album or two that I liked early on, and then they put out 70 albums, and I just stopped caring. But let's check this out.
Let's hear it. What do you think?
I liked it. I'm Mr. Goth. I'm wearing a Sister's Mercy shirt. Um, that was pretty cool. That little middle part reminded me of the good goth era of Tiamat, which I like quite a bit.
Mm.
Uh, I don't know. They have, like I said, they have a bunch of records that I just didn't really pay attention to, but I did pay attention to like the first two that were maybe a bit heavier than this. Um, I don't know. They're just one of those bands. They're kind of like there. Like I never I never like put them on or anything. But when I hear it, I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. What about you?
Yeah, I actually don't mind the song either. A lot of hype was swirling around when the Gloom Becomes Sound, their last album, and
Hmm.
I tried listening to it a few times, and I could just not get into it. I didn't like it at all. And it was kind of the same experience with Down Below. As I was watching this, I was going, why does Adam why is he trying to channel Carlos Santana with his little hat in the music video? But, I mean, remove that. Actually, it's a pretty catchy song.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of goth as well, so right with you there. I love Sisters of Mercy. Love goth when it's done right.
Yes.
And this is catchy. It feels like it's a bit different to stuff they've done before. And actually, I think this sound, this direction really suits them.
Yeah, I'm gonna peep this record, and I may go back and peep the ones I've missed.
Yeah.
I don't think they've played the States. I don't know if it's either ever or in a very long time. I can't be sure. Maybe once, but I don't know. I have to see. Listeners, keep me honest. But you know, yeah, they're on Century Media. I think they're is it Century Media?
It is Century Media.
Yeah, I think most of their records are on Century Media. So yeah, if not
You're
all.
absolutely right, though, in that it kind of has that throwback to the late '90s, gothic metal. When bands like Tiamat were making that switch over, it almost you could almost imagine this kind of song being on mid-career era Moonspell as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny. I get shit for it. My favorite era of Tiamat is the late 90s, early 2000s. It
Yeah.
is. They made like these four banger records in a row. And at one point, I'm like, this band is going to be the next Sisters of Mercy, but it did not happen. So, but they got very big in Europe. They did get very big in Europe for a bit,
Tiamat were
but they
huge,
never came
absolutely
through
huge.
America. Mm.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
they were absolutely massive. I remember meeting Johan from Tiamat like years ago. I'm trying to think what record it was on. I think it might have been on Amanethus, which they put out
Yeah.
in
That was like the
2008.
last, yeah, big,
But yeah, I mean, when you're talking about albums that you like, you're talking about Skeleton, Skeletron,
yeah.
Judas
Judas
Christ, that
Christ,
stuff. Yeah,
Prey. Yep.
yeah. No,
Mm.
there was some good music to be found there. I've always been a fan of Moonspell too. The only Moonspell I don't like is the last couple of records they put out. I'm fairly indifferent to them, but I liked every. I mean, I discovered them on Wolfheart. I liked
Me
everything
too.
that they did
Yeah.
from there. I thought Sin was great. I thought some of the more commercially accessible stuff was very cool, and then they kind of went back to making heavier stuff, which was great. More recent Moonspell, not as big of a fan. I am a massive fan of Testament, though, and the great news is there's an update from Chuck Billy on their next album. It says here, Billy said the drums are finished, half the vocals are done, and most of the guitars. No leads or bass yet. Steve DiGiorgio is out on tour with Death to All, and Alex Skolnick usually waits till Eric's drums are done with all the rhythms. But we're trying to get it accomplished. We leave for tour on July 10th, so we're trying to get it all recorded before then. So should hopefully be wrapped up soon, and then I would assume they will probably try and put that out in early 2025. I thought their last album, Titans of Creation, I thought was very good. I did not think that it topped, if you think of Latter Day Testament, didn't beat Dark Roots of the Earth. For me, that was like peak Testament in my view. But it was still a good album. I mean, to me, I've said this many times on the podcast. I'm keen to get your view on it, but I just think when it comes to the old guard of the legacy thrash bands, there's no one that can hold a candle to Testament for
Yeah. I was going to
consistency,
ask you.
quality.
Yeah.
They're fucking fantastic. I love them.
I am not super up on like what's the best of those, say, last four Testament records. But in your opinion, it's Dark Roots?
Yes, without a doubt.
Okay.
Dark Roots of the Earth is incredible.
Mm.
Brotherhood of the Snake has got its moments too, and Titans of Creation has got some incredible songs. But as a complete end-to-end listen, Dark Roots of the Earth is the album.
What is the best new era Exodus record?
The last one they did.
Okay.
I loved the last record.
And the best one with what's his name? The guy who
Rob Dukes.
yes, rest Rob Duke's record.
I like Exhibit B. I thought that I thought the Exhibit A, the Atrocity Exhibition, was quite good as well. As a matter of fact, actually, Shovel-Headed Kill Machine is pretty decent too. Maybe out of those three, I'd choose Shovel-Headed Kill Machine.
A lot of people say Shovel-Headed. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always liked Rob Dukes, but I like Zetro as well. But I do think Persona non grata, to me, it felt like a rejuvenated Exodus. It really did. I thought the whole album was fucking fantastic.
And you know what?
The songs are to the point, really aggressive, very well played. Again, it felt to me like this was the first Exodus album in a while where I could hear some of that aggression they have on stage being carried over very successfully into the studio.
It's funny, like some people really love Rob Dukes, and they're like, some people would say, "Oh, Exodus kind of did him dirty," but I don't really see it that way at all, even though I don't know the inner workings of the band at all. I just see it from a business perspective and from a like, okay, what do the fans want? Like, wouldn't the fans want Zetro back? Like, and when he came back, it had the fucking, I think the impact, play on words, that they wanted. You know what I'm saying? Him coming back elevated the band twofold. Would you say?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, I guess you could in some ways, some people would make the argument that was the case with Belladonna coming back into Anthrax.
Oh
as
yes,
well.
very similar.
But I very firmly disagree on that. I think that John Bush is a superior vocalist. He was certainly superior live. I saw Anthrax 3 years running, 2 times with John Bush, 1 time with Belladonna. Both times I saw them with John Bush, they were one of the best live bands I'd ever seen. I left after 3 songs of Belladonna. I was like, this is so unbelievably fucking terrible. I'm not going to put myself through seeing this.
Yeah, Bush is he's the better vocalist. I'll say it. Even though I don't
100%.
really like his records with them, is he a better vocalist currently? Yes, he is. But I think again they had to pull that trigger to bring in the people in the seats, I think, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. I just think even from just a pure performance level, the old songs sound better with John Bush. Live, like if you saw them, in like the mid 2000s when John was doing, Caught in a Marsh, I Am the Law, all of that sort of stuff, it just sounded better. Everything about that band was better with him in it. Belladonna is a shit front man. He's a terrible vocalist. He's just
He at one point was a fucking metal god. Back in the day.
I know. Don't know how it ever happened. I think Chuck Billy has more fucking talent in his pinky nail than Belladonna will ever have. Chuck Billy, to me, like, that is the cream of the crop of metal vocalists. I mean, he still sounds so powerful, and he's so versatile because I'm this big of a Testament fan that, to me, Demonic, The Gathering, and Low, they all still get very regular airings, and they all have a place on my gym playlist. So it's like there hasn't been a bad Testament album in my opinion. And part of it is down to Chuck and just his ability to do death metal vocals unbelievably well. He can sing unbelievably well. He can do his thrash vocals unbelievably well. And you've got guys in the band. Steve DiGiorgio is one of the best bassists on the face of the earth.
I love
Alex,
him. Yeah.
in spite of his Scully D rap shit, he's a very, very good guitarist. Everyone in the band is just at the absolute top of their game, and I don't understand how Metallica don't take these dudes out on tour with them. I just feel like that would be a
Yeah.
nice thing to do. In some way, I feel like they're scared of being shown up because it will almost certainly happen by virtue of just the quality of Testament's material alone. Their music now that they're putting out nowadays compared to the nonsense Metallica has put out on 72 Seasons and the garbage on the two preceding records, it's incomparable.
I gotta tell you, when Death Magnetic came out, their return to thrash, a record I actually like. I feel like there's like two or three Testament riffs on Death Magnetic. Like I can't think of the songs right now, but there are these moments where I was like, that sounds like Testament. Like were they listening to Testament when they made this record? Like Practice What You Preachy, New Ordery vibes, I feel like on a few moments of Death Magnetic. And when Metallica did this big arena show in New Jersey not too long ago, I don't know, 2 years ago, whatever, they did put Overkill, Jersey band, on the show, and they built a stage for them in the parking lot. I forget who the actual opener was for the whole tour because that's who opened.
They
But
had
they did
Prong
this.
on that tour as well, didn't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they put yeah. I think it was something like that. And then I think in California they did a similar thing where I don't know if it was Tesla, was it Death Inc? Like they put another classic band on a show like right out like pre-show, which I thought was cool. They don't have to do
Yeah.
that.
No, they
It'd be nice if
don't.
they put them in the arena. That would be
They
nicer.
should have them in the arena playing with them.
Yes, yes.
If I were in their shoes, that's what I would be doing. I'd be doing my level best to elevate all of these great bands that a lot of people overlook. And certainly, if I go on tour, it would be like if I were their management, a tour they go on would be something like Testament, Death Angel, Overkill, Prong,
Yeah.
Metallica. What a
Yeah.
package!
That'd be
Everyone
interesting.
there is going to leave with smiles on their faces. You know, seeing them play with fucking Bokassa or whatever shite, and then Ghost, it's just, oh god,
You know who could open
excruciating.
that and it'll be like, okay, so they put the new band on Power Trip.
Yes, 100%,
Yep.
hundred
Oh,
percent.
fuck yeah. Yeah.
By the way, we'll listen to one more song and then wrap up. But before we do, I could swear I remember an episode of Necromaniacs where you spoke about going to see Southern Death Cult. Just and
No,
I just,
well,
again I think about it just because I'm seeing them. The cult announced they're playing some North American and Australian shows. It was actually that comment that made me go back and listen to those first Southern Death Cult records. Holy shit, they're good,
they're amazing. Thing
unreal.
is, they did a show in California, Southern Death Cult. They didn't play New York, unfortunately. My girlfriend and I wanted to go. They played New York, and the cult last played New York City in 2022, but now they've announced this 40-year whatever thing. No East Coast dates yet for this leg.
Mm.
So, but I think they're going to be playing some old shit on this tour from Southern Death Cult and from the first Cult record.
Okay,
When I saw them in 2022, they played, stuff from like not the first record, but like I don't know, early shit, but not super early. But I think this one in particular, this new tour, is where they're gonna really go back and play it. And I hope they announce the East Coast leg soon.
yeah. Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember you talking about it, and I immediately went back and I listened to the record again, and it fucking hell, that
Oh
is
yeah,
it's timeless. It's absolutely
amazing.
incredible. Like I would argue, as good as the very best of Fields of the Nephilim and Sisters of Mercy.
Oh yeah. I mean, Southern Death Cult is probably a bit of an inspiration for Fields, maybe not for Sisters because Sisters literally is like 80. So,
Mm.
like they're early. Um, but I mean maybe they even shared a stage together at one point in the very early days. But yeah, I would gather that the Southern Death Cult, early cult, might have been a Fields influence for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's wrap up with this one. I wanted to make sure we listen to this song because I know you like the band.
Oh yeah.
Spectral Wound, releasing their fourth album in August. It says here, black metal formation Spectral Wound are back with a new full-length announcement dubbed Songs of Blood and Mire. It will be officially unleashed upon the masses on August the 23rd through Profound Law Records. This 7-piece black metal offering was recorded and mixed by Patrick McDowell at Blackgate. Mastered by James Plotkin. For a preview, give a listen to the aristocratic suicidal black metal track. I really, really liked the previous Spectral Wound records. I've been very much looking forward to this. Let's see what this sounds like. First impressions.
First impression is that they're going for something a little different in this particular track.
Yeah, that was what I thought too.
Stripped down, riffy, hooky. Bit different for Spectral Wound, actually. Good track, but different. Hate the name of the track. I think it's a very silly, it's a silly name.
Yeah, I
for
agree.
a band that is not silly to me, actually.
It's a
Kind of
silly name
silly.
also for a band who, I mean, I know they're based out of Canada, right? Yeah, they're based out
Yeah.
of Canada. I don't know whether or not English is their first language, but this is the sort of thing that I would have expected to see on an Osmos Records ad in 1992.
I've seen
what I
them
mean?
live. I've actually seen them live 3 times. Me and my girlfriend. We saw them a month ago, actually.
Oh yeah,
They were great with 1349, a band that does nothing for me. I like the song. Very different. They're kind of like more epic-y, Would you agree? So
Yeah.
the stuff that you've heard from them. This is a little more kind of like meat and potatoes kind of style. I'm wondering if the whole record is like this or just this one track. I like it, but definitely a little different from them. But they're a band that I love, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the record. What do you think?
Well, as I just said now about the the Osmos ad from 1992, I wonder whether this isn't a deliberate throwback to something from the early 90s, because the song has that feel, without a doubt. It's definitely got a throwback feel to it. It's quite simplistic. It's there's a couple of the legendary bands where if you got hold of a demo, you might hear a song that sounded something like this. Back before they were layering too many different things onto onto a single song, the songs were a lot more simplistic. This has just that throwback retro vibe to it, and I somehow it ties together to that name. I'd love to, I'll see if I can get somebody from the band on the podcast and
Oh, that'd
see
be
if we can
awesome.
uncover that mystery. But there's definitely something that feels quite intentional about the name and the direction the song has taken. I certainly recall a Diabolic Thirst being a bit more aggressive and a bit more full on than what I've heard here.
Yeah.
But I think it's decent. I think it's good.
Yeah, no, it would be killer if you could get them on the show. They've become quite popular. The crowds for them, and the three times I saw them with my girlfriend, like they have a lot of fans in New York. They do well here. Um, and Profound Lore is a fucking cool label, and we actually met the singer for like briefly, and he was a really nice guy. But yeah, very stoked for the rest of this record. One of the best of the new era, what I call black metal bands for me personally. This is one of my favorite. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, my friend. Well, thank you very much for doing this with me again. Always love having you on the podcast, and you've got an open invite anytime you want to be on.
Thank you so much, man.
And
I
we
appreciate
will
it.
do
And,
at some point in the next couple of months. We will do our hardcore crossover thrash
oh yes,
countdown.
we
We'll
do
speak
need to do it.
to Sensei Mike Hill about it too.
And real quick, speaking of hardcore, I just want to send my best to Lou Koller from Sick of It All, who was
Oh
recently
yeah.
diagnosed with cancer. He's a good friend of mine, and sending all my love to him. And there is an official GoFundMe on Sick of It All's Instagram and Facebook and website that you can donate, and any amount helps, honestly. I know times are tough these days, but whatever you can give towards Lou would be a personal favor to me, Sheriff Scandato, and of course, a very big help to Lou personally. Yeah, man, I love the guy, and nothing but the best for him.
I'm just having a quick look at the details of the case. So they found a tumor in his esophagus that
Yeah,
goes into his stomach.
yeah. And it's cancerous. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they've caught it early on. But
Right, right. I mean,
certainly I agree with you. I mean, what a nice guy. I've seen them live many times. I have always been totally blown away by seeing them play. A band, I was listening to like way back in the 90s in South Africa. So I feel like I've grown up with them a little bit.
yeah.
Really sad news about this, but as I said, I'm kind of holding hope that they've caught it early.
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's funny. I mean, Inhuman and Sick of It All did shows together, and they took us out for like a long weekend once years back. And many moons ago, I had a comic book store with my brother John, which is how I met Mike Hill, actually. He was a customer in the
Really?
store. That's how I met Mike Hill, 2010. And back then, Lou would come and hang out at the store every week. And we became very close, and he's friends with my brothers and my family, and so yeah, I mean, it's very shocking and sad news, but I think he's going to get through this, and I'm sending him all my love and prayers, and yeah, man, it's we need you, Lou.
Yeah. Well, I'll post the GoFundMe link in the description to the podcast as well. So if anybody has any ducats to spare, head over there and throw some money their way.
Absolutely,
But
man.
yeah, good vibes, positive energy only to Lou Koller.
Definitely.
Awesome. All right, brother. We'll speak again
Thank
very
you, Jimmy.
soon.
Yes, thank you again, and be well.
Thanks, brother. Talk soon.
Cheers.
Bye. That brings us to the end of episode 232 of Into the Necrosphere. I trust that every single member of the Legion not only is still listening, but that you've thoroughly enjoyed that. Big thanks to Jamie Bailey of Brodequin. Make sure you check out Harbinger of Woe if you have not already done so. Thank you also to Sheriff Mike Scandato for his time, for coming on the news rant with me. What a blast doing that with him, even though, disgracefully, he wasn't into the new Ecclesias. I predict, though, there will come a day that he's going to come back to me and he's going to say, Jackie, you were right, I was wrong. That album, in my opinion, album of the year. It's something fucking miraculous forged by the very hooves of the devil himself, is going to have to be released between now and the end of the year to knock that thing off the #1 slot. It is just absolutely astounding. But anyway, we will at some point, no doubt, have Nas back on the podcast. Once again, keep the old rain slickers handy, because the soy boys, the tears of the soy boys might drown you otherwise. This has also been one of those episodes, one of those kind of no quarter asked, none given type episodes, which means there's only one way in which we could properly close it off, with one of the hardest death metal tracks ever recorded by the band Cryptopsy off the legendary record None So Vile. This is Graves of the Fathers. Whatever it is that you are doing, and wherever it is that you are, my friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.